Good.
Neighborhood. As we've talked about in the past, when you're drawing those lines, especially on a vacant lot, you really have to make a decision about where to draw those lines. And it's somewhat arbitrary in the sense that if it was one parcel to the north or one parcel to the south, it really doesn't change a large land area within the downtown that's within one or the other district. But a decision has to be made on where to draw that line. That 186 Main Street is a vacant lot. The city owns it and has really been trying to market it as an opportunity to create more downtown buildings, but also to expand on our traditional downtown Main Street. And what we're hearing from a number of developers is that the maximum 3 stories that's allowed in the T42 district is really not enough to justify the construction costs on that lot. And it really takes another story or 2 to justify the construction of an elevator and the other amenities to serve a commercial or mixed-use building like that. Planning Board had recommended back in late 2017, early 2018, the Planning Board had recommended that we change the zoning on this parcel from the current T42 zoning district to the T51 traditional downtown center district, and that would allow for that higher intensity development on that parcel, and it would sort of be the bookend of our commercial downtown Main Street on the southern side, or eastern side rather, southeastern side. Right now we have a residential building just to the north on Main Street. It's a brick building, fits in with the either the T42 or the T51, and then the building just to the north of that is the Roque block, which would only be allowed in the T51. That is a 4-story plus the mansard roof that would be allowed in the T51. To the south of it, it really does transition after that parcel into a neighborhood character that matches the T42. A lot of 2-story buildings, an occasional 3rd story or attic story from there to the south. But that really is the boundary between those 2 districts, and looking at it on the face of the earth, you can see that there is a transition there from the more urban downtown T51 to the T42 neighborhood area. The council at the time had encountered some concern from some immediate abutters and chose not to pass that zoning change in February of 2018. Even though the Planning Board had, through their public hearing process, recommended approval of it. Planning Board recently asked about the council reconsidering that decision in light of the interest from developers, and we think we have an opportunity to see development on that site if we can go slightly more intense, have up to 4 stories above the street level, plus potentially an attic or mansard roof story, similar to what you see at the Roque block. And they've asked that the council reconsider that. We put it on the agenda for a workshop tonight to see if there's interest here at the council level in doing that. The process for that would be where we already have a recommendation from the Planning Board, and they've recently sort of reasserted that recommendation that they think it would still be valid. We would schedule this for first and second readings with the council, with one of those being a public hearing that notifies all of the property owners within 500 feet of that parcel. So really, what we're looking for tonight is, do you want us to go ahead and schedule that so we can hear from the public, have a first and second reading, and give it another consideration? It's not a final decision, certainly. Or if you are not at all interested in that, then we won't spend the time or the money on the public notices and scheduling the public hearing.
Go some questions first for Eric.
I think a comment, and those of you who were here before can help me. What really put us off was the design that we were presented for that building. Is that correct?
It was. There was a couple things. I was here. A couple councilors didn't like the design. And then there was a couple people, literally a couple people, which I believe they're all moved away from the neighborhood now, that were across the street. They didn't want their view blocked. That was the old design. There was historically a building here, though, that burnt down. Correct. I can't remember what year, Leroy. When did that?
Remember the year either.
It was a while ago. It was like 20 or 30 years ago. But there was a building there of prominence similar to the roadblock. But yeah, they didn't like the design look. And does form-based coding fix that a little bit? I mean, I'm not aesthetically in tune, so.
This was a very modern building. It certainly doesn't have to be this. In most cases, if you change the zone, it then either allows something or doesn't allow it. In this case, where the city owns the lot, you have a lot more latitude in kind of explaining what you'd like to see there and only approving a sale for a building that meets the council's expectations. One thing that the higher intensity district does is, one of the concerns was that there's still views of the river over a portion of the lot. The taller building may allow for a smaller footprint, if that's something that the council desired, to still allow a public access point on the southern end of that building, possibly in this area, maintain visual access to the river, but also potentially a pedestrian access to the river at that point. You're really in the driver's seat with what eventually happens with this lot as the owner. But the extra stories will certainly make the economics work better.
The other picture shows the walkway, doesn't it?
The other
Is this the one that was rejected?
Yeah.
The other picture shows a walkway on that southern end of the building. It would also allow people walking by to be able to see the river from the roadway on Main Street. The developer at the time was interested in having that, both for their own use, but also for the public. And it made a lot of sense. I mean, the former ADAPT plan really recommended that we open up views along that entire side of Main Street, removing a lot of the homes that over the years, different councils have chosen not to spend the money on demolishing some of those fairly nice buildings along that section between there and New Auburn. And I think it would be too bad to lose all that value in the buildings that are there. So I think those were good decisions, but I think we have to decide if we want to see a 2-story building or a 3-story building here, or if we're open to sort of extending the downtown to that 4 to 4.5-story attic story.
And they said they didn't like this one?
Yeah, they voted. That would have been built by now. It would have been 45, 50,000 a year in taxes, I believe. And it would be
Or
open.
this one?
Nothing.
I mean, this is just,
It was a $10 to $12 million project at the time, and they similar to the current developer that's interested in the lot. They needed the extra stories to make the investment work.
this was a plot that we all talked about and identified during our retreat. When we were talking about downtown infill, and the anchor conversation as well. And this is one of those 5 or 6 parcels that we did identify.
That one's nice, that building.
Right now, this is the parcel. You can see it's part of that T42 that extends to the south. What's being proposed for consideration is that T51 zone would just be extended 1 parcel to the south to include 186 Main Street, and that boundary would remain at the southern edge of that parcel.
So I think the other things, just, and I believe it was Councilor Gary who brought up access to the Riverwalk, which is important. And also, I don't know if the people are moved or not, but I know that there were at least 2 people who really did not want to lose their view.
So there's no access now.
Right.
So this would add access. And there are a couple people, yes, across the street that didn't want their views blocked. That was the immediate, that was really the only concern that I remember. Access, but this solved it. And I think there was a TIF proposed in order to compensate, or there was part of the development deal for the free land. There was something so it'd be really no cost to taxpayers to have that access down.
Never formally approved, but there was a discussion with the developer that we would propose to council and staff would support assisting with the new tax revenues generated by this, assisting them with building the public access stairway.
That's the old project. I mean, it's all about the new projects too. But there is an economic benefit to going up when you have the sunk cost of an elevator and the infrastructure and the cost of, I mean, it was cheaper to build this building 3 years ago than it is to do today. So, and it was needed obviously then to do it then, so it's definitely needed today.
And if modern is not the style, this is a very modern building. If that's not the style that the council's interested in, we could make sure that in talking with developers that we're looking for something more traditional looking.
Yeah, I agree. I'm supportive of utilizing that footprint, particularly where historically there was a building already in that location. I think it makes sense to develop. We're talking about infill, we're talking about developing our downtown. It's a perfect project for that. I would like to see it match the character of the existing brownstones there. I think that we would see some public pushback on a building this modern. But I do support opening it up to public comment, and I'm supportive of developing that lot.
Like the architect wanted to be an artist or something when they were looking at it. It just doesn't, you're right, I mean, it doesn't seem to fit very well.
Yeah.
The architecture, I'm looking at the downstairs mostly, and it sort of matches what's down further at the other end of the building, down lower on Main Street. Are we trying to I'm just sort of wondering, you're not going to match it perfectly to the buildings that are next to it, but we're not too far off of where we're looking at the buildings further down, lower on Main Street. It's just a different style. So would that be what we would be looking at? I mean, brick building is a brick building.
We've been really pushing to have a commercial first floor with any of the proposals, encouraging developers to include that in their proposals, something active like a restaurant or retail.
Yeah?
If there was a desire to be sort of more closely match the Roque block style commercial storefront, we could certainly, if this passes, we could certainly pass that along as part of the advertising of that lot.
And with the space in between the buildings, with the access to the river, so we're not snugging up against somebody else's property. I mean, I'm sure there are setbacks that we would be meeting for those.
The stairway itself would be fairly close to the property line to the south.
But I'm talking about the one further south, up on Main Street, down the 190 block.
Over on this parcel.
Yeah.
There's a significant piece of that lot that is vacant, but I would expect that the stairs would probably be pretty close to their property line if we were to fit that in there, as well as a substantial.
You only have a 5,000 square foot building envelope in this lot. It's tight, as it is, 5,000 is pushing minimums.
No, I'm just fine. I'm trying to think of complaints before we get them, that, they're going to say, oh, they're going to look in my windows. Well, the building 20 years ago has looked in your windows, so.
Yeah, there's a vegetated buffer there on the private parcel to the south between them and the next building. And it's a rental property that I'm sure we could contact the owner and see what his thoughts are.
Okay, are you ready to give a little bit of guidance? Council, are you ready to give, I'm sorry, Councilor Gary, did you want to give guidance, or do you have a comment?
Now, you'll guarantee that that building, when it's built, will be no higher than the Roque block?
So the Roque block, let me go back to that other picture. The Roque block is 1, 2, 3, 4 stories plus the attic. So the street rises up. So if you did 4 stories plus the attic here, it would sit a little bit higher than the Roque block in relation to the roof line, but it would still be 4 stories from the street, plus the attic story.
Can't be a hill.
It could, the roof line, if they did a full 4 stories plus the attic, they're starting at a higher elevation because the street rises there, they would be slightly taller than the Roque block.
Chief, Councilor Mills?
Why do we not want it any taller? Is there,
I think that's up to the council. It really could be kind of the bookend to our really truly commercial downtown, I think, and taller is not good or bad. I think it's a preference of the council.
It definitely won't be taller than Drummond Street Hill.
Let's look at, the one question at a time, I think, and then we can move on to progression if you're okay with that. I mean, right now, do we have consensus, just simple show of hands, on moving this forward to a council debate? Ordinance drafted, I think it already is. Okay, so we have consensus to move forward on this. Now, I think when you're looking at the definitions, to Councilor Milks, your point, definitions on height restrictions and so forth, I think that could be talked about during the ordinance first or second reading, okay? If some modifications want to be made by consensus or amendment. As far as picking the stylist, of the building, I think there's enough information that Eric has probably gleaned from this conversation to give some guidance. But he's right, any project would have to be approved. But at least now we know that a project could happen. So, and that's a matter of the developers working with the council on look and
Ask
feel.
another question.
Yeah.
How tall is Plattsfield's building, Mr. Platt's building?
Oh,
I
Great
believe it's
Falls,
7 stories.
7 in the attic.
Yeah.
7 in the attic, plus.
Because way back, that was the highest you could go with a building.
Yeah, that is, that's a higher intensity zone. You could still do buildings over there that are taller than what this change would allow here. That's the T6 district, which is our highest intensity, tallest building district in the Great Falls Plaza area.
I
Mr.
just
Wells,
also
last
add,
question.
I'm in favor, I think that building looks good, and I'm in favor of,
I just had a quick,
improvement.
I'm looking at this right here, and I'm thinking about what the people that are doing the construction might be looking for. In this picture, which is the old plan.
Counselor Carrier, can you speak into your mic?
I'm sorry.
Thanks.
The plan that's here, I know, is not the one that they're proposing, but do we remember offhand what we're looking at for apartments?
I don't remember the total number. I know the total project costs were in the 10 to 12 million range, but I could look back at it and see how many units they were proposing.
I mean, we're talking about putting high-end, or not high-end, we're talking about putting market rate or, whatever we need downtown for more housing. To me, this looks like it's a,
This plan actually had the second floor as office. Third and fourth as, I remember looking at the plans, third and fourth were apartments. So, and they were all market rate, I think it was like 1,000 to 1,200 square foot each.
If they were 1,200 apiece, you're probably talking 4 per floor, 3 to 4 per floor.
It was like 8 or
times
10
two,
apartments.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'm all good with it.
Okay, so we will see an ordinance
We will
on our
schedule it.
agenda, next week?
We could do first reading next week, but for public hearing, we'd have to do it on February 16th.
Fair enough, okay. Great, thank you, Eric. Okay, we're going to move on to Appendix A. And I want to just take a minute and kind of just orientate you on the concept. It's a little bit different. And what I did is I crafted a flow chart, if you would. I believe everybody has a copy. And I'm just going to go through this as an example and just talk you through it. If on something so, there are a lot of line items in Appendix A, fees and charges, and permitting within the city of Auburn. In order to kind of keep it moving and to give staff some guidance going forward, I want to kind of follow a pre-described flow. So I'm going to go through as a moderator, and I'm going to go, we should do it A or B, or have a permit for it in certain situations. So the description goes, and then we're going to talk, regardless of money, is this something that we should be doing as a city? In this case, should we be offering notary services as a city, yes or no? And then the decision-making process, if it's no, we all decide no, it's then going to go to staff. Staff's keeping a list. They're going to go back internally, and they're going to discuss whether or not that's a recommended recommendation from us, if they concur, or if they don't concur. They'll have the ability to come back and tell us, we really think that you should be doing this, okay? This is why it's important. Now, if we decide it is an important service or fee or permit, then we go to the right side of this chart. Does a permit warrant a fee, or should it be a self-serve / self-reporting? That's when we can start talking about the financial component of the fees and how they're situated. Then that's going to cause those decisions, those consensuses that we make there, decisions, will then cause us to talk a little bit about a proposed fee structure could look like, if it's something different than what's already printed on this document. Again, everything goes back to staff. Staff will then work through everything and all of our recommendations and thoughts and present something final for us to look at. Goal here is to modernize our fees, go through it very quickly, and say, okay, there are certain fees or permitting requirements that aren't needed. Okay, that can just be taken away. Certain things can be absorbed in the normal course of operations. And then we can get down a little bit deeper as warranted, but not too much time. This will help guide staff on their final process on what to propose to us for a modernization of our fees. So in High Point, think about it as zero-based budgeting, start from zero. We're going to work into what we want for permitting. Costs will come into play, but we can't get bogged down in line items and so forth. We just don't have the time. That will come later, okay? But we can have recommendations on what we think the fees should be. Make sense? Any questions on the process? Councilor Zani?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question, do we have knowledge in the room to compare to other cities?
No, it's not. There's no comparison to other cities, really. Mentally, you can. And the final debate, when it comes to an ordinance change, yes. But this is about what Auburn feels is right or wrong. It's almost like that instinctual gut check on correction. Our guiding conscience will be city staff at a latter point, okay?
Thank you.
I have a question before, Mr. Manager, you sent out an email with a breakdown of costs associated with all the fees. Is that an overview of 1 year?
I think what I provided you was a revenue of certain fees when it came to permitting, electrical, plumbing, and signs. I think those are the 4 areas.
Commercial
And then I think you
building.
also had a document that had all other fees, revenue-generated fees that we collected.
Yeah.
And I think it was it might have been FY 20.
Right, this one here actually is the 1/1 through 12/31 last year. Commercial buildings, dwelling, 1 and 2 family, electrical, plumbing, and sign.
Yes.
And remember, merits, cost is separate. Is it right or wrong? Or does it need further research? Okay? And then we can go into a little bit deeper. But what I don't want is I don't want to end up to a process thinking and having put any of us in this position of, well, we have to have these fees because this is how we justify these staff positions. I want to try to get away from that, right? And this is not, it's just a different way, a way that I haven't seen government look or approach at permits and fees before. So we just want to try to explore it from a
Just as a
different side.
question, not just something that jumps out at me. So electrical, for example, we had 510 permits issued and 27,000 in revenue. As opposed to commercial buildings, we had 126 permits and $100,000 in revenue. So, that seems like a lot of action for very little revenue type of thing.
We'll hold that thought, footnote it.
So-
When we get to electrical, which is part of this conversation, we'll start digging into it again. Merits versus cost versus fee.
One clarification if we can.
Please.
So if staff has already identified an addition to like an administrative fee, do you want that conversation to be considered now? Or do you want that to come back forward when staff provides recommendations on all the changes?
Now,
Okay, I
okay,
have
it's like
those.
if there's administrative fees outside of notary, let's add that in.
Okay, yep, then I'll do that.
Then that way you can get a quick consensus up and down.
Okay.
On this too, what we want to do for time, or else we will literally, I mapped this out, we'll be here till midnight if we let the debate keep going. If we want to table something, it's perfectly fine, okay? If we can't come to a consensus and we can't deal with it, that's okay. Put it to the side, put it in the parking lot, so to speak, we'll handle it later. So we'll try to keep our thought process, our one support, not support comments down to about 30 seconds or so. Let's make some quick points, and then we'll move on, okay? So nothing wrong with not making a decision. Okay, so let's start. We'll try to follow this process as best we can. I'm sorry, someone, I'm sorry, I can't, you're out of my peripheral, Counselor. Go on.
Sorry. At the top, notary fees. I can understand.
Well, hold on, if we
Yes.
can. Let me go through the process first.
Oh, okay.
I want to follow this process and keep it regimented. That way we can keep this
That's
going,
fine.
okay? So first is, under administrative fee, we have notary fee. Right now, notary, if you need notarization done at City Hall, it's a $10 fee. Is there anything you'd like to add, Mr. Manager? And I'm always going to defer to the manager to add any color or commentary here in this section.
Most of the time, this is a convenience fee, where somebody's coming in to file something, they need it notarized. We have the ability to be able to notarize it. If we had it as a free service, we wouldn't have the staff probably to manage it.
So, is this something that we want to continue to offer to the city residents? A notarization fee?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes? Across the board, quick comment, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can understand when we come into the city clerk's office to get official documents that we need to have them notarized if we're going to send them out or if we need to file them. But when it comes to election stuff, Normally, our candidate petitions are notarized, and if it's the individual, we don't charge. But if we have a form, so like if we do a petition and we need to have a form to validate that we are a registered voter, we need to pay $10. I would like to see that I can understand if I came in with a whole bunch of petitions.
What would you like to see, Counselor?
What I would like to see is for that specific form from from the Secretary of State's office that says that you're a registered voter, that person, if it's that person that's getting that document, should be able to get that document for free.
So you'd like to see notary fees waived for any type of political office, signature turn-ins for a local office?
Right, the validation form that they are a registered voter.
Okay, so we'll keep that down for validation. Okay, so we've decided through consensus that notary service is a yay. Fees, should we be charging a fee, yes or no? I have one note to research on political.
I agree with that's cut out, but I agree with the
Okay,
Mayor
so
that-
let's add that as a follow-up to that, if we can make an exemption to,
I have that for staff.
okay, very good then.
We'll just need to make sure that it covers the personnel costs, which is what the city manager was referring to, if we delete some of the.
Just as, yeah, for the political side, it's not very often that we run for office. And again, local only. Okay, very good then. So that's going to go to staff. They're going to come back with us. Second, administrative copy fee per page, $1. I shouldn't have said the price. Should we charge a fee for copying for residents?
No.
I've got some no's. I've have some yes. Do I have an argument for the no? Would you like to give an argument?
Yes, we should only be photocopying items that are required to be photocopied here. Otherwise, we have a library, we have other places that can be photocopied. So
Okay,
only
so-
official type documents that are required to have copies here.
Okay, so basically, if you need something copied, photocopied here in site for something that the city's requiring you to do, i.e. a permit or a fee of some sort, there should be no charge.
Correct.
Do I have a fee?
So are you
argument?
saying only city business?
Yeah, you could,
So I
yes, you
can't
couldn't
come in
bring
with
in
15 pages and I
and
need
just,
to
and
have
pay
my-
$1, right, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll weigh in on this one, Mayor. Freedom of information allows for FOIA to come in and basically FOIA anything. If you do not have a fee for it, that means somebody could come in and say, I want XYZ that you have, and it could be 300 pages. We would be printing 300 pages as a result of FOIA. However, we have a fee, so we can still do that, but we require the fee. If we didn't have a fee, a lot of those FOIA requests, which we only have to make available, which means they would have to view it. We could take this book and say, you can review it, take a look at it, but we're not providing copies. If we were to eliminate that, and we receive dozens of FOIA requests, weekly. So that would be my only concern, is that somebody could come in and ask for a 1,000-page document. We're now, because under a FOIA request, and we do not have a fee for that, we would have to provide that, and at no cost.
Okay, quick, we're going to go back for a reconciliation. Is this something that we want to continue doing as a service? We have to, I believe. Copying, yes or no? Yes, okay. Let's go down to the designation of fees. Right now, we charge $1. Is there any modification of that fee that the city council would like to make? Up, down, indifferent, elimination, optional?
Keep it as is.
As is? Do I have
Follows
as
the
is?
state requirement.
Do I have an as is? Everybody agreed? Yes, nods are good, thumbs up, okay.
Do
Moving
I have
along.
other items in
Oh,
administration?
yes, please.
So Dedimus justice fee of $5 is currently being proposed, same as notary. There are certain documents that do require that. We do have a couple Dedimus justice staff members that can go ahead and much like a notary, but it's certain requirements that would require Dedimus justice.
And they have to pay for their own, like a notary has to pay for their own stamp and everything. These same people would have to pay for their own, so,
Our staff, it's paid for by the city for their,
okay.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that? Similar to the notary, since we have that service and fee, is there someone on staff while the city's open that would be able to provide those services to me while the city building is open?
for the most part, we do. I think we have
Okay.
3
Okay.
that are at that level that we could use in case somebody's out. But if all 3 were out, we
with
wouldn't be able to do it.
Okay.
We'd have to schedule.
What's the cost? We're all good with the learning more about this proposed administrative program? What's the fee?
$5. It's
$5.
less than what's required for a notary because of what they have to do is less than a notary requirement.
Very good. Is there any opposition to this at all, or should we move forward? Going on? Yep. Phil, keep going with that, man.
Large format prints. These are 24 by 36 prints, 36 by 48 prints. These would be maps, those kind of documents.
When are they usually required?
A lot of times it's more, you have a developer here that may, Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but somebody might want a print of something and for us to be able to print that and make it available for them, we could now do that through this.
Yeah, something we have on file, or if they just want a copy of a plan that they have. And we just don't want to be the cheapest so that people come here instead of going to the private sector.
Is this comparable to market rates?
So we're recommending $20 for 24 by 36 and 25 for 36 by 48. It's, again, more of a convenience. I'm here, I'll have it printed here.
Council? Yep, okay.
Scanning fee per page. There's times when somebody would just want something scanned and emailed, it's still staff time that does that. And then 2 different fees, one for a regular 8.5 by 11 to 11 by 17, and then anything larger than 11 by 17 is a separate fee.
Service that we want to provide.
For only city business,
City business.
just for city business.
So what's
So
the,
instead of a copy, they may want to have it scanned and sent to them.
in the cost?
Cost would be $1 for a regular page, just like a copy fee, and anything larger than 11 by 17 would be $5.
What's the cost difference for a larger scan?
The cost, it might be that we have to go to a different copier, that
Oh.
staff person probably has to go to a different copier and use that. We only have a couple of those that we could do that on.
Hey, Councilor Gary?
Okay, when it's election time and I come in and I want a copy of my opponent's campaign reports, if I want a copy of, I'll say, the good Councilor Boss's, if I get a paper copy, it's $1 a page. If I don't want to pay the fee, I can get it scanned and it's given to me free.
At this point, it would cost you $1 on this proposed.
It'll be either or.
Still a staff time for somebody to go to the copier and print it.
Right.
But it's $1 for the whole thing.
One
No, it's
Per
per
page.
page is
Per
what they're
page, I'm
trying
sorry,
to
per
say.
page.
Yeah.
Scan or copy.
And I think that's where it's important to come back to the theoretical underpinning of this fee. This fee in particular is about preserving staff time. It's not that it costs $1 per page to scan or print, it's that we're trying to preserve staff time for other duties.
Right, but to what Counselor Gary is saying, that's information, can I get that information anywhere else for free?
You can look at it,
Because I have to
right?
come to the staff to get that information, then
You
I need
can look at it for free.
Yeah.
The moment you want us to do something with it.
Can I
now
borrow
we
it for free?
You can't leave, we can set you up to look at it.
Like, I have no problem, like.
Most everything is online anyway.
That,
So if
that's
you're
what the
looking at
issue I
like,
have, if
say,
I can get it
The
digitally or
contribution reports,
email
are all online.
and print it
They're
versus
not online.
having
Our
to
city
pay for it.
council ones aren't.
I pulled them.
Yeah, you have to go to Sue, right? You have to
Because they're filed at the state level. The city files them at the state.
Right, I'm
We can get
pretty
some- But again, at the end of the day, it really shouldn't matter if it's an election, or building a home. I mean, you're going to pull out, you're going to do something, I'm just giving you an argument, it's still staff's time.
Right.
And, we're not trying to make a profit. I think I'd ask you all to think about, does this pass the threshold of nonprofit or just basically covering staff time? I mean, we're not making money off this, so. And it's a service that could be found and could be done in the outside world for the most part. So are you all in favor of moving forward with this? Again, we still have a final vote on this one too, so this is just moving things along, okay? Okay.
Next would be a growing trend is genealogy. So genealogy research fee, $5 per record, includes a non-certified copy if found. So people are coming in, searching the genealogy, that again takes staff time, but it would cover that cost.
Okay, any objections to this?
Logi,
No? Okay, moving along.
Logi.
And then next is a true attest copies. And I don't have,
There you go. Oh,
I don't have Sue
But
here
you
to
were
talk
doing it.
exactly what that is, but my guess is it's more of a copy that, if you're gonna get a birth certificate, I believe it's that official record that has that, that's a true attest copy, which is different than a regular copy that you would have. It's different paper that's used. I believe that's it, but I can have Sue clarify that more, but that's $3.
How much?
$3.
$3, okay. Any opposition to that conceptual? No? Okay.
That's it for administration.
Okay, very good. So we're going to move on to animals, which is next. Starting off with dog license fees. First one is unaltered dog, annual fee, $11. Obviously, dogs, you got to come in, you got to get your dog registered. They're either unaltered, spayed or neutered, which is $6, late fee after January 31st. So conceptually, let's discuss, should we require residents to have their dogs licensed on an annual basis?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Do I have any more yeses? Yeses, hands?
Yes.
How about no's?
Well, I just have a question. So
What
what's
for?
the point of having the fee? Are we keeping track of all the
That-
dogs, the
well,
number
that'll
of
be
dogs?
next.
the
That'll be
type of-
next.
No,
Just-
but that goes into the question of, do we think we should have it or not?
Yeah, I know, but right here. Then we're going to go, no, just conceptually, theoretically, do you think we should license a dog? Okay? So we're going to, theoretically, yes, we should license a dog. Now let's talk
Why?
about why. Is it necessary?
Like, I don't see why we need, I mean, what's the purpose?
So the
When they're loose dogs or they're bad dogs, it's a way to track the owners and make sure that you can match the dog to the owner.
Not only that.
The fees also pay.
Make sure that the animal has got its shots. Normally, you bring in that paperwork, and as somebody who worked for that agency for about 30 years, yeah, it's very nice to know that somebody doesn't have to have rabies shots.
I will say, we might need to look into this as well, because I think there might be a state requirement component to this as well. So, that will require a little bit further due diligence.
So let's parking lot it, and let's come back with a requirement on cost and whether or not it's necessary. Okay?
Late fee jump to $25. Does it cost that much for somebody to come in late? You do
It's
the
just-
same amount of work.
It's about motivation, or else we'd have people that were late, we'd have to send out notices, which we do. So it covers that extra work to send out a notification letter out to someone else. So the thing is, we advertise that with, here it is, what, January 25th? I'm watching the calendar. I know I need to come in and do mine, and I want to make sure I don't get it beyond, not me personally, I don't want to come in beyond January 31st to make sure I license my dog. My motivation is I don't want to have to pay the $25.
So that sounds like an arbitrary fee that the city imposes.
That is an arbitrary, yeah, I believe it is. We can check to see if that ties in with any state requirement, but I don't believe it does.
So if we're looking at late fees and we're looking at them, let's take that down for a second. Let's say hypothetically it's not a state mandate that we do a late fee and the date's arbitrary. Is there any argument to say we need to push that date out any further or just the fee? No? Everybody happy with the fee and the date?
Yes.
Mind you that it's not state mandated.
My assumption is you don't pay a late fee if it's a new dog and you're just bringing him in for the
That's
first time.
correct, yeah. Okay. Impoundment fee. If we have to impound a dog that we find, and then for that dog to be released, correct, Phil?
That is correct. We currently get billed quite frequently for this. We are in a contract which is required by law for us to have a shelter. So we do have to pay additional costs. Part of that licensing as well is if we have individuals that have had their dog injured in an accident and no one's claimed the dog. There's fees that go to that by having a license. We can then go back and say, this is your fee, not the city's. If we don't have that, the city's paying for that fee. Impounding is the same thing. Sometimes it's a stray dog where we're bringing that dog to the Greater Humane Society, and that's covering the fee for what we need to do to bring the dog there. There might be boarding fees as well on top of that.
Can
that
we,
we would have to cover.
park, if you all are good, parking lot this until we know the exact fees and what they are on a per day and marry it up?
Well, the per day changes, that's why it's to be determined. So, and it has to do with the size of the dog, has to do with if the dog is injured, so that will never have an amount in it, because it does vary. It's to be determined based on the dog or the cat or whatever we might have.
Now,
Gary?
yearly, we pay a fee whether we have a dog taken there or a cat there or not,
You
right?
pay a per capita fee to have it available.
Right.
There's other fees you pay.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're paying, you have to pay the fee here, then you pay them over there.
If you're claiming the dog, then you're paying that fee, that's correct, but you might have also an impoundment fee for us, especially if it was a dangerous dog where an officer went out and had to take possession of the dog and brought the dog in, or quarantined it, or whatever it might be. There's a lot of variables to this. Usually there's no impoundment, dangerous dog registration fee, that's on certain dogs. We typically don't have any, people know what those are pretty consistent.
Is there any modification that anybody would like to make or suggest on this? And we'll go down to the dangerous dog one as well.
I have a quick question going back one step. There's only a $5 difference between the unaltered dog and the spayed and neutered dog. I'm assuming because we would prefer that people spay and neuter their dogs. But is the $5 difference once annually enough to encourage folks to actually spay and neuter their dogs? Should it be higher, or do we not care and have it be
I
one
think this
flat
is
fee?
something if we park this, I think we'll come back to,
Okay.
because I want to say, I see those fees the same.
So that might be
So my
state.
guess is that might be the same.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it'd be helpful as we go through, I don't know, and obviously we can't go back now, but which one of these are state-driven?
Yeah, I don't know if that, if it was state or not, if it would motivate me. I mean, puppies motivate me to spay. I don't want puppies, but that might not be the answer for everybody. Okay, we're going to go down to building and building regulations. First, single family, construction, residential, new construction and additions. Obviously, if you want to give a little color on this one, or Eric.
Yeah, Eric's here to speak to this.
Okay, Eric? And forget the cost right now, just why?
Yeah, we're required to review plans, issue permits, and conduct inspections because we're a community of over 4,000 people. The state mandates that we enforce the Maine Uniform Building and Energy Code. As far as the fees, our goal with the fees in the past has been to try to cover some of the costs of administering that so that the other taxpayers, just as an example, the single-family homeowner, retired person that doesn't have any intention on doing anything to change their home, they're on a fixed income, that they're not picking up. That's really
Okay,
how we
so
looked at it.
on the fees aside, we are mandated to review permits for single-family home construction within Auburn because of our population's over 4,000. Okay. Does it prescribe how that review process happens?
It requires the issuance of a permit, so that requires reviewing the plans. That gives the person building the project some certainty that what they've given us on paper is going to be acceptable when it's inspected, so they know what to build.
So hold on. Is there any guidelines from the state that says what we have to check? Not certainties or guarantees, but if I want to build a house,
We have to make sure that what's built meets the requirements of the Maine Uniform Building and Energy Code substantially.
that's it, okay.
That's it, yeah.
Do we have to inspect the house?
In order to say that what's built meets the requirements, yes.
That's a state mandate that we have to go and inspect the home once finished.
There's no other way to verify that it meets the standard.
I'm not, it's not like, you're on a stand or anything, but we need to know what we're doing, or else we can't continue, I think, along with the conversation. Because if they just want a permit and it's a self-check, in theory, we could go and check a bunch of buttons. Here's my contractor's name. Am I going to have a roof? Yeah. Is it going to be at this degree? Yes. Is it going to be hot water heated? Yes. Da-da-da-da-da. And it's self-administered and I'm done. My permit's complete.
Be done by a municipal building inspector or by an independent inspector that's certified to do that by the state.
Okay, so it has to be inspected. Okay, very good.
And Eric, you're talking specifically regarding new construction and additions, currently,
Renovations.
renovations.
All of them fall into the same category. There are certified state inspectors that we could rely on their report instead of doing the inspections ourselves.
Okay, now I'll bring it back to the council. We know that we have to have state mandated inspection, permit, follow it up and verify that the plans are actually executed. How do you all want to proceed?
Is this standard practice kind of everywhere? It just seems like it's a lot of detail. Are most builders knowledgeable about this, and it's not a problem for them to follow this fee structure?
I believe most municipalities have different fees for, certainly for residential versus commercial, and for renovations versus new construction, it's pretty common to have a different fee, quite often because the renovation fee is really only necessary because quite often it doesn't have a defined floor area. Like new construction has a clearly defined amount of floor area. Renovations can be spread throughout a building and kind of scattered. So it's typical that they would use a cost of renovations to calculate a renovation fee versus for new construction, it's based on the floor area.
So generally, our fee structure isn't onerous for new building. I mean, we have to,
Not compared to other communities.
Okay, so this is one of the, goes back to comparing to other communities. We can compare, but I will hear, this is probably something I get the most complaints about is our inspection process. Is how we're inspecting and how people don't, on a new construction, they follow through. But with regards to renovations and stuff that they're doing that they can hide from the city, they do so without getting a permit. Because they do not want to invite the level of inspection that happens. So fees, if we think about fees for a second, we ask ourselves a question: should we continue on with the same permitting process that we have now, or do we want it to be modified? And we're just talking again, line 1, new construction and additions. We could
Well,
probably throw in renovations in there too.
I
but-
wonder, for example, if somebody builds a second-story porch that collapses and they haven't gotten a permit for it, that's a different issue in terms of liability than if they had gotten a permit for it, correct?
Well, I think we have to have a permit, but the question is to what level, degree of the inspection that we have post-permit? Do we charge for the permit will be something we'll ask second. But how do we do that? If it's someone who's already licensed by the state, a contractor, electrician, a plumber, on further line items down, is that good enough? Because they're already licensed by the state to do their work. Do we need to come back in and charge money to inspect someone who's already been licensed to do the work? Again, so in theory, and then we have the liability. You know, do we want to continue to own it? Do we want to continue to inspect it over and over again? Because if you do that, then you do own it. Versus, again, residents doing something within a permissible sphere, is it something that we want to keep following up on? Any other thoughts on this? We'll get into costs in a second, but do we want to continue permitting as we do now for new building, single family, and construction? The concept, not the cost.
I think we should. Yes.
Okay, so moving on to cost. So fee schedule right now is $25 base plus 25 cents per square foot. There has been a recommendation from staff to increase that to $30 base, and I don't have the per square foot.
Eric, was it 30 or was it 26?
I'd have to look at what it was last year. We don't have that in the packet. I don't remember if it was 26 or 30 cents per square foot.
30 and 30.
30 and 30?
30 and 30? Yeah. Okay. So going from 25 to 30 and 25 cents a square foot to 30 cents a square foot. We could parking lot this a little bit, but what's your general thoughts on this? I mean, I don't want you to have this conversation in a complete vacuum, but we should have it in a little bit of a vacuum. Remember, everything the city does subsidizes everything the city does, or everything that everybody in the city subsidizes everything, okay, to a certain degree. And if we want to renovate homes, we want to encourage people to add value to their homes. Should we at all be disincentivizing them, even though with a nominal fee? Or should we simplify and modify the fee schedule? And this could go under accessory structures, renovations, and so forth, larger or bigger than $2,500. We already know from a previous workshop, I think it was last week, that in building permits, nobody gives the truth. They all put in what they think it's going to be, thinking they'll pay less in taxes. And I don't think that changes down here with these permit dollar amounts. So we also have to look at it from a practical standpoint, and I'm giving you some information. This is really just a lot of stuff I've heard from constituents over the last 3 years. If you need a fee, or a permit, excuse me, for an accessory structure, and you hire a contractor to do this, yeah, they're gonna go to City Hall and they're gonna pull the fee for you, or excuse me, the permit for you, and they're gonna pay the fee. You're gonna end up paying it in the final bill. You're also gonna pay the time, the effort. That $25 fee plus goes into 100, 150, depending on what the contractor wants to put inside of the overall cost of the project.
So are you saying you don't think we should have this fee?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just throwing that information out for you. I will say that we have more complaints from contractors and businesses because of our fees and inspectors than almost anything else in the city. And I mean, I'm not going to ask staff to comment. This is something I'm hearing, and I think if we've all looked back or email Leroy, I mean, we've talked about this a lot over time. Belinda, if you've been around for a long time, this is like the number one thing that pops.
Not want to have fees? What's their
They
complaint?
don't want to do business here
I'm
because of the onerous fees, really the inspection process post fact, and the fact that we have so much more, and again, it's perception's reality, than what they think we should or what their experience, especially with contractors, with outside towns have. So there is a comparison, especially if you have contractors working in multiple municipalities. So
Well, that's
there,
what I'm asking about, comparison to other cities. Does it force us either to be better or worse? And what difference, because you're saying it makes us seem like a worse prospect for building if our fees are, and is that,
Well, I think our fees, I know the mayor didn't want to go into comparisons, but I don't look at these fees and think that we're certainly not higher than hardly any community. Our fees are really low. So the question then would be, do you want to charge a fee? Because we're really at the bottom of what every community is currently charging. I think when you look at complaints, I think what ends up happening is you're going to have these handful of complaints that carry over from year to year. But if you were to look back over the last couple of years, we really haven't had any. That's been part of a change with, I think, looking at some of these issues and saying, all right, we've dealt with some of this regarding certain inspections, how we handle that. And so some of that has gone away. Not completely, because a lot of times, I think Eric, probably our biggest challenge is renovations, right? A single family is not going to have the same issues that a renovation will have, where someone is trying to add a second floor or make some other substantial change to a structure, and that becomes challenging.
Oftentimes, too, if you don't have good plans on the front, and when you approve the permit, there's a miscommunication between the person doing the work and the inspector about what they're actually doing, and then the concern gets found during construction rather than during the plans review.
but it does seem, even despite the complaints, it does seem to me to continue the process as is, from what you're saying.
I'd propose this. Part of this is simplification. A simplification of what we're doing, and a trust in the individual versus an absolute within government oversight. So, for example, new construction and additions. Instead of putting into a formula there that requires a fee on a per square foot basis, it feels like we're nickeling and diming our residents and the investment community, people who want to move here because of the size of their home. And that goes further down. If you charged a flat new construction and addition fee of $50, and that's hypothetical, I think it needs to go back to staff for a little bit of work on what the actual cost of that inspection would be, but a true flat fee, regardless of new construction size or addition. We're only talking residential here, by the way. And then you look down at renovation. You know, if it's under $2,500, let's have them self-report. Fill out the permit application, okay, or a statement if you would, with all the relative information, and it goes on file. It's a renovation, okay? And I would probably up that to $5,000 because frankly, $2,500 on a renovation doesn't cover a quarter of a bathroom at this point in a real basis. Anybody renovate a bathroom? I think the average, Councilor Milks, what's the average cost to renovate a bathroom? $8,000?
Depends on what you're doing, but yeah, it's expensive.
Yeah. But at a
Fair.
certain level, yes.
So what you're saying is so if we just look at new single-family dwelling, take that line item alone, you're saying that it would just be a base fee of, you said $50?
And that was just for argument's sake.
So currently, a say, 2,200 square foot home with the current base plus the square footage is around $690. So you're saying drop the 690 down to 50,
Absolutely. Or something
or
similar.
something in there?
Yeah, something similar. When I say 50, again, do we want to add $690 cost onto the already high construction costs? Again, for argument's sake, we have to think about, do we want more cost or less cost, or do we want it flat? Does it cost $690 to inspect a home?
Eric just talked about the process that staff has to go through to be able to do this is more than a $50 process.
I don't believe it. I don't believe necessarily that's accurate. That's, I think is it more than 50 or is it less? What are we doing, and should we do it all?
So I think we're starting at the bottom, at all the details instead of at the big picture. So if this is correct, what you said, single dwelling, 1 and 2 families, our total permit fees for last year was $33,000. For all 1 and 2 family construction that we did. So I would assume that would cover all these single-family fees and all these multiple family fees. Everything on this top 8 lines was $33,000. And we had 210 permits issued. Is that correct?
I don't have the spreadsheet.
Which one are you looking at?
I'm looking at your email that you sent, Mr. Manager. The permit type, it was an
Dwelling
email.
1 and 2 family?
Yep,
permit
and
fee?
it was the email sent 1:22 at 3 PM on
Yep.
Friday.
Dwelling 1 and 2, $33,269.
Total permits, total permit fees. For construction, that's construction, renovation, everything.
That's correct.
And 210 permits.
And 210 permits.
That's $158 a permit.
So do you think it should be more?
No, I'm saying that's what it is. Why don't we just make it $158 a permit, and then everybody got to get a permit when you do work, solves all, then everybody's worrying about the solution, then we're dealing with what the solution is, as
Because
opposed to,
you might be upcharging somebody that's really only going to be should be paying $25. That's my only concern.
And somebody who's doing a
Well,
25,000 square foot
I think you
something or
can,
other.
but
yeah.
I know, if I know it's $160 to renovate my bathroom, I'm not doing my thing, I want to make it $24.99, so it's only, it's $160 to get all the permits. It covers, if you add all these permits together, it's not that much money.
And Eric,
Of residential, in electrical, we've got 510 permits for $27,000.
yeah, I'd say the average one is about $47 on
Right.
electrical.
So make it, if you're doing a renovation of your house, your bathroom, you're gonna need electrical, make sure that the electrical work is done right. $160 covers everything.
So that's interesting, because right now, to do this, you need a permit to do the work. Plus, you're going to need a permit for the electrical, the plumbing, and so forth, all the ancillary. Permit fees add up. So to your point, though, about simplicity and fairness, I'll tell you right now that most people, if they're doing something inside the home, they're not getting a permit, regardless of what the price here is. They're just going to do it.
But I don't think that's what we should be discussing. I think
Absolutely, we need to, because
Discussing what
if you
is-
make
is
something
on this
unfair, people
paper.
don't do it. That's why there's tax fraud, because people believe it's inherently unfair, so they try to not pay taxes.
Rewarding people for not for
No.
cheating the system.
No, absolutely not. What I'm trying to say is, how do we decrease the cost of doing business for all residents of Auburn? How do we promote renovation? How do we promote new growth? And through fees that really
I
are
add-
so nuanced.
Add to that?
Please.
And how do we make the inspectors' jobs and the city, instead of figuring out how many square feet, and we divide this by that and add this to this, instead of talking about the solution that the homeowner is asking for, and having the expert, the electrical inspector, make sure that it's done properly, instead of nickel and diming and make sure that they get every penny out of the homeowner. Instead of that, why don't we have them working with the homeowner to make sure it's done properly and not worrying about the cost?
So there,
That's what's gonna make it more efficient.
so as a community, you do have sovereign immunity when it comes to some of this, because you are a municipality. So when you look at liability, there's certain things that do not come back to the city. If we get to the point where the people that we're hiring is designing and taking that step, we shouldn't be doing that, because the moment we do,
That's not, I'm not saying designing.
saying
I'm
assist somebody in developing.
Encourage the homeowner
Yeah.
to invite the inspector in, to look at what's being done, as opposed to discouraging, because I'm afraid he's gonna look at this, and look at this, and look at this, and charge me more, and charge me that, and charge me this. I wanna make sure that what's done, if you take that revenue piece away from the inspector and just have them accomplish what they need to accomplish.
And I get it, but the challenge is that if you have a city inspector going in that sees a life safety issue, there is a responsibility there. That if that is a life safety issue, that they do need to take action on that. If they walk into a basement and see something that is a life safety hazard, they have to bring it up. They can't not look at it.
We're on page 1.
Yeah, we're getting down.
Yeah, I think. so
Into
I
the
think
very
if-
much of the
get to a
weeds.
We're
point
gonna have
where-
this conversation for every item.
Well, I think you're tackling it now, and then that's gonna set it up the stage for everything else.
Yeah.
Because what you have to really get at is, there's a $189,000 value that's coming in currently there through inspections, permits, right? So if
Commercial
you,
is 100, residential is 89.
as a city, you could scratch all of that. The question then becomes, how do you wanna make up the $190,000? You're not gonna be able to do it with staff, because that staff still has to
Didn't
go
say
out and do the
scratch it.
inspection.
I just I just offered a solution, and we're now into the.
But Steve,
that
I
it
think,
can't
and
be
that's,
done that way.
we've kind of let this go because it's important, as Phil said, it's going to help drive the other conversations. But the concept here is, we're talking about, do we want to or do we not want to? It then goes to staff, for staff to look at the overall cost of having the individuals and the staff time, again, overall, and then sort of by grouping. So they can come back and recommend to us a way to simplify, make more modern, what the fee structure, or eliminate certain fees through technology and advancements. There's cities, I was talking to Brian, there's cities right now in the country that you go online, you do everything online, and you print off your permit at your home, and you stick it in the window. And as long as you have a licensed electrician that's doing the work in your home, you're good to go, because the state licensed that electrician. So there's no inspection needed. Again, up to a certain level. And that's what we really need to be starting to talk about, versus, if you build a really big home, we should charge you more than someone who builds a small home. Yeah, at that point, we are cutting hairs. So it's a good conversation to have, but we have a lot. And again, if we're just talking hypothetically, if we as a group want to discuss hypothetically whether or not we should try to do something different or keep what we have, we can move forward. Okay, we could try to get through this whole list fairly expeditiously, knowing that what we decide here is not in stone. Okay? So just to kind of finish this off, and I'll ask the question, do we think permitting is necessary across the board for anything done to a home in Auburn? Can I just see a show of hands? Yes, for anything done, zero, regardless of dollar value. Okay, so right now, we got the majority of council believes a permit is required. Now, everything has a permit. Do you think that every level of rehabilitation, building, whatnot, should have a fee associated? Or do you think there should be a graduated scale, let's say, on the fees? Depending upon size
I
of
don't know
project.
enough about this to be able to make that determination, which is
This
why.
is not a final decision, Holly. Open your mind and just try to think about conceptually, how do your constituents feel about this?
I understand that. I just think going through it this way, is it possible to get the staff to go through this first and give us, just like they did with the
No.
ordinances?
Let me tell you why. So, let me tell you exactly why. Staff, here's where staff hates me in the morning. That's okay. We represent the people are the ones who pay these fees. Staff is the one that executes policy. We have to decide policy, not staff. Staff can't decide whether or not they want to charge less or more in order to make sure there's funding for their positions in the future. It very well could happen that because of our decisions now, that after review, there might be staff changes, okay? But then again, that's because of policy decisions.
I think the only thing that I would clarify, Mayor, because you're absolutely right, up to the point regarding funding for staffing positions. You have to have those staffed positions by state law. It's just whether or not, how you want to pay for it is really what you have to decide. Once you decide that, this becomes really easy. So that's really simple. But those staff positions that are mandated to do the, review the permits, do the inspections, we're over 4,000 population. That has to happen So that's all you have to get at. It's not about these permits will pay their salaries. It's whether or not, as a policy, you want it to do that. And
by
it doesn't
law-
cover all of it.
By
either.
law, we have to issue these permits.
By law, you have to issue permits and you have to do inspections,
Okay.
because we're over
Right,
4,000
So the question
people.
is how do we want to charge for it?
That's what you have to
Either
get
out
to.
of taxes or out of a fee.
That's what you have to get to.
Right.
Yeah.
And what I think the mayor is trying to get to is, can we do it easier, where it takes less time for the inspectors and less time for staff, and makes it easier on the end user, the permitting process? That's the question.
And we also have to look at the definition of
Is that right?
inspection and, yes, it's how do you modernize things? How do you encourage our goals as a city? If we want to sit back and let staff dictate everything, I think we're doing a disservice. This is a hard process, because this council is now forced to actually make decisions. When I said 0, we're starting at 0, right? In theory. So every time we add something, it's adding a fee in this conversation, because it's a true workshop. Final decisions will happen during ordinance. But this gives us guidance. It shouldn't, I don't want it, the desire is not for this to be difficult. The desire is for this to be a really quick go-through of this in order to kind of get people's initial thought process, okay? You like it? You don't like it? Does it make sense? Does it not make sense? Should it be modified, yes or no?
I think the question that the manager just said is actually the question that we should, before we go through all these, is, are we going to use fees to cover the $189,000? That's the question, yes or no?
No. I mean, we don't need fees to cover the 189.
Right, if we don't use fees to cover the 189, are we going to raise, it comes out of something else, right?
Yeah, when it comes time to, right now, you have $200,000 is a lot to cover in your budget. So if you're looking at a 200,000 loss in revenue, we'll have to find that somewhere else, or we'll have to raise taxes. Those are two options. That's the process. And I think, so, and then to the other part, and I think you could easily, when you talk about streamlining, I think I'm understanding what you're saying. You're saying, hey, regardless of my permit, this is what I want it to be. And if you're talking about single-family and multifamily, we can set up a standard fee that if it's a full, single-family build-out, it's this cost. If it's, everything after that becomes policy, however you set it. Either it's going to be because, once you dictate the amount, every project is going to come slightly under that amount, or it's going to be way above it anyway. So it's really that policy that you set. But if it's just here's the fee for any renovation at a single family, here's what your cost is. It's this, regardless of what you're doing, which should be separate than commercial, because once you get to
Right.
commercial,
Two separate things.
Two separate.
completely different.
Let's
So
try,
me, Mr. Homeowner, I want to build an addition, a $50,000 addition onto my house. I don't know if it's close enough, too far away from the next door neighbor's lot. I don't know if the electrical's going to get in there. And if I knew that all I have to do is pay my $160 for that renovation, and it covers the plumbing inspection, it covers all the stuff that the mandated the city does, if that's, and now I can, all right, that way I know that it's covered. That way I'm not going to worry about calling the guy to find out if it's 10 feet away from the property line, or if the electrical, if I need, is it 3-prong, is it, all the other stuff. I know I'm covered. I'm not going to worry about getting charged another fee for that, whatever that number is. Streamlined fee, that makes it,
so,
I just want to make sure it doesn't get to service-based, because that's not what we're looking to do.
right.
so let's backtrack a little. If you ever need your packet, you can go to page 5, backside of page 5. We're going to try this exercise with something that should be, though I'm not going to say is, a little bit simpler,
I see.
okay?
Which one?
Jukeboxes. We charge, as a city, $30 per jukebox as an annual fee. Now, is a permit necessary? Phil, do you want to add any descriptor to the jukebox fee? Backside on the left side of page 5, I believe I counted. 2, 3, 4, 5.
They're numbered on the bottom.
1016. I'm sorry, you're right, 1016. I didn't see that. About a third down, jukebox. Phil, is there anything you'd like to add about our jukebox fee?
I mean, I think we might have 2 in the city. I'd have to check with the clerk, but
Do you think?
I think this is a carryover from something that's been in the ordinance for a long time.
So, when we clean something up, jukebox fee. Should we have a permit for jukeboxes, first and foremost, in the city of Auburn? Anybody arguing yes, that we should have a permit to have jukeboxes in Auburn?
Good.
Okay?
What's the
Would you like to
history?
elaborate?
If you ran a business, or if you were the president of a business and you knew what jukeboxes bring in a business, you know that this fee isn't even close to where it should be. This fee should be a lot more than it is.
Right.
Why?
Jukeboxes that run in establishments like clubs and bars do $400 or $500 in a good weekend without even blinking an eye. They use credit cards today. I got friends that will pull a credit card in there, and he'll spend $50 playing the jukebox. Doesn't even think if it's costly or not, but it is.
Okay, so
But-
you believe we should have this fee, if not higher, because jukeboxes are so profitable?
They are profitable.
Councilor McLeod?
So similarly, I would just wonder why we would want to impose that fee yearly, why we would need to take a cut of that instead of just letting the business owner keep that extra $30 in their pocket.
Because people that put in jukeboxes already cut into the profit. In most cases, I believe the jukebox business is like 50-50. So if you take in $3,000 for your jukebox, you're giving the person that gives you that jukebox, that gets all the permits to the rights to use that music. So he gets $1,500, you get 15, and it may not be 50-50 anymore. I've been out of it for quite a few years.
But what does the city do? What does the city get out of having a jukebox fee? What do we get out of it? Other than $30?
It's revenue.
Right.
Why do we deserve the revenue?
Right.
Sorry, that's what I'm trying to get at. is what's-
Same argument. My daughter sells cookies and soda pop, so she shouldn't charge tax on soda pop? No, state's still going to charge you tax on a soda pop. So what's the difference? We're talking about taxing what they're earning for the most part. So if we're going to cut out the jukebox tax or some of these others in here, I mean, I haven't read them all, but I'm sure that there are a couple in here that probably need to be modified. But if we're going to start deciding what we're taxing, I got a bed that I can move in here. We'll just stay here for the rest of our, terms. So we've pretty much decided that, at least with the other part, there does need to be fees. Now we're going to the finer part of how much do those fees need to be? And we're not going there yet, correct?
Well,
We're just talking about.
Correct, you're correct. Is it necessary? Should we be doing it as a city? Is this a business the city should be into, issuing permits for jukeboxes?
When the jukebox
Well, we've sort of jumped ahead.
generates $1,500,
It's right here.
that goes into the bottom line of the business, and then
Hold
that
on.
person
But should we, is there a requirement? Is there a need for us to permit a jukebox?
Sounds like there is.
I'd love to hear it.
I believe there is, because first of all, if you're in an establishment where the noise is too loud and you have to send a police officer there, it'll be because the jukebox is turned so loud that it's blowing your ears off. I know they bring bands in, we can't charge them for the bands, but we do charge them for
sure we can.
allowing entertainment in their building. It's the same thing as the jukebox, it's just done in a different way.
And by the same token, jokers. They have electronic equipment out there. Do we charge them? Because if you're not going to charge them,
Arcade?
I mean, it's.
Well, that was the one thing I
It
was.
should be apples to apples.
Right, that's the one thing I was looking for was arcade games
I don't see
and,
arcade games.
skee ball and all the quarter machines that you see outside convenience stores. We don't take a cut of those as far as I could tell. But I'm just to make things fair in that regard. I wasn't aware that jukeboxes made that much though. That's fantastic.
But, hold on, again, we're going down to what business are we in? Is it right to permit for a jukebox? We do, that's a question. If it's yes or no, if the majority thinks you should have a permit for a jukebox, then we can go down on the cost. Because we only have a couple in the city. Or we can save paper and ink and not do it. Do you have that book of how big our ordinances are?
This is why it's difficult, because Counselor Walker just made a very good case for that, which I never would have thought.
He made a case of taking companies' profit because something's large, something has a lot of profit, we should take more of it. That was a case that Councilor Walker, with all due respect, made. He said they make a lot of money, we should take more of it.
Well,
I-
but that gets back to, and I don't mean to interrupt anybody. But that gets back to, are we charging a fee? Well, it doesn't make any difference. We're not talking about fees. Should we charge for this?
Is it a
Well, if you're going to
tax?
charge for one machine, you have to charge for all machines, because they are earning revenue off that machine. They earn revenue off Coke machines. They earn revenue off game machines.
I don't think it's about it being a machine. What I heard from Counselor Walker is that it's incredibly loud and could cause a service call from police. That's what I'm hearing from you.
It can.
And you're not going to get that from a pinball machine. So it's not about, this is why having the theory behind the fee is critical as a starting point for the conversation. Otherwise, I can't just say yes or no without hearing the history and why we're here.
And you have to remember, just another example, you got some places that only have one pool table, they're not charged for that one pool table, but you go to a pool hall, they all have to pay a fee on, they're called something else other than just, we'll say, a bar room that has one table.
It's $50 for a pool hall, per table.
Per table.
Yeah, so, I mean, that changes it. Not everybody's charged for a pool table, but if you're in the right business, we charge them because that's the mechanism that works around.
So, in my State of the City address, I said, we should really work at limiting the regulations, the permitting, the fees, down to what is really necessary for health and safety. Now, we can argue that with building codes, and I think that's a really good argument, right? Health and safety is absolutely applicable to anything with a residential or commercial building. But pool halls, how many pool halls does Auburn have today? None. We have one movie theater. We might have 2 jukeboxes. You know, so when you're thinking about it, are these permits?
One pool hall.
Are these permits or are these taxes? Are we actually just using the word permit, or is this something that the council wants to charge a tax on? Because a permit, okay, is different than a tax. And you should justify the permit because there's some sort of enforcement that goes along with it.
Well, every building that's in business has to have a floor plan as well. And if you got a jukebox sitting over there, and it's in your floor plan, that means that when you go there, and anytime you open a business, you must do the floor plan. Jukebox isn't there, that means there's room for something else there. And, you know, I look at it like New Auburn Social Club, we used to always do the floor plan for our business, and I got 6 pool tables. If I move a 7th one in there, it may change how many people can't get into an establishment that says 120 fit. You take out all 7 of them, now I can bring in 200 people, but I can't because I got 7 pool tables. That's why it's important to know, and if you're gonna make people read plans, look at plans like the City of Auburn, then there has to be some kind of a little fee to go along with that. Now, I don't know if you want to blame the jukebox for paying for it, or you want to use the pool table, or do you want to use the bar? I don't know what you want to use, but somebody's got to read all the plans. They got to make sure that 120 people fit in there. You haven't changed it. So every year, when you register, the jukebox is registered, the pool tables are, the sit-in tables are, the bar is, and it all means something when it comes to prices, you know.
Is there anything, again, trying to speed this up a little bit because there'll be further debate when we actually vote on this, but trying to get some skimming off the topic consensus. Is there anybody that wants to get rid of this permit? Forget the fee, the permit for jukeboxes.
I do.
Anybody else want to get rid of it? Okay, everybody else wants to keep let's talk about fees. Right now, there's a $30 fee that we collect for a jukebox
Want to get rid of
annually, every year. Do we want to
Want to get
self-report,
rid of the
or do you want to
permit for
keep
pool
the,
tables, the fee for pool tables?
hold on, please, one second. This one was supposed to be easy, okay? But it isn't, you know, because I really think that everybody here just wants that additional residential money. That's okay. So,
It was going to be easy.
I made a flow chart, which was a great flow chart, by the way, thank you. But it's about just your gut tells you something, yes or no. It's intuitive.
So staff's recommendation was to eliminate this.
Staff recommendation was to eliminate it. I got to tell you, after a while, our book of ordinances is this thick.
Why don't we get staff that's what I'm saying. I know it's our responsibility. No, I respect that.
You don't own it.
But with information, I mean, I don't know about jukeboxes or how they work. I don't know about the whole pool table thing, and I'm supposed to make a decision?
Yeah, absolutely, you're elected to.
Then we're going to
So,
take
and
We're
then-
time to
elected
get
to
the
use
information.
data to make good decisions, and I think that if we had 100 calls from the police department for the 2 jukeboxes that we have in this town, we should know about it. It's not about my gut reaction,
we?
it's about hearing about what's happening in our city.
No, we don't have it.
Thank you, so
let-
now we can make a decision.
Okay, thank you. Okay, make a
It's
decision.
easier.
You guys want to keep the permits on jukeboxes?
Well, and I think hearing the cities, what they have told, the input, that to me is really
And that's
helpful.
wonderful, but you guys are the city. Remember that. And not to sound frustrated, but you're elected officials to make decisions. If you need more information, that's why we have this in the process. You can put it on the parking lot, okay? Or else we will be here all night. But there's also probably a majority of counselors here that want to move it forward because they have the knowledge on it. So that's what we're trying to get to. And we have to respect people who don't have the knowledge on it, but we also have to respect people who do have the knowledge. So I'll ask again, after we had staff's input on this, do we want to keep a jukebox permit? Yes or no? Yes. Who wants to get rid of permitting for jukeboxes? Nobody? We keep it. We have one. Okay. So with that, we keep jukeboxes. Is there any
Right
thought
now,
on the
We haven't
fee?
gotten rid of anything, and we're one page in, can't even get rid of the jukebox, so, I mean,
So let me ask this. So we'll
This is a
change the
futile-
process
this is
to
a
make
futile
everybody happy.
undertaking.
What do you guys want to get rid of? What do you think is archaic? Without staff interjecting, what do you think as elected officials, in all of Appendix A, which is probably, 150 permits and fees, should go?
So I think your process is a good one, but I think we need to
I'm
just
sorry,
get.
Councilor Lasagna? Can I just get someone to answer? Is there anything out there then I'll bring it back to you. Is there anything out there that you want to get rid of?
I've offered several suggestions.
Please. Is there anything that we haven't discussed?
I've offered several. I would like to see a completely streamlined process for, well, residential construction, which would eliminate much of the fees, but we can't get to a general consensus.
Is there any specific ones in here that you think should go, should be stripped? I mean, we had this last week. Yeah, I'm going to take a recess, 10 minutes, so everybody can look at Appendix A. At a workshop, thank you very much. So we're going to continue with a slight modification. I'm going to open this back up. I think council has now had some time to look at some things. I'm just going to entertain anything from the floor. Is there any topic in our current fee structure, Appendix A, that you would like to bring up as something that you think needs to be looked at as non-necessary, necessary modification of fee? We'll start off to the right. Councilor Carrier?
I think that there's several in here that could use modification.
I'm sorry, could you speak? I can't.
I said I think that there's several in here that could use modification and consolidation, and I'll use a plumbing one to start off with. The plumbing part of it, which is found on page 3 and runs into page 4, actually runs into page 5. There's tons and tons and tons of fees for this and that, and then if you're doing plumbing work, it's plumbing work. You know, are you putting in a new bathroom? Yes. Are you putting in a swimming pool? Same thing, plumbing. Why are we charging 47 different fees for, it's plumbing? I sort of agree with Councilor Mills. Now, I'm more of a kind of a person that, you know, we're going to have to make the fee, I can't think of the word I'm looking for. My mind has wandered off. Sort of equivalent to the project. I mean, if it's something that we're going to have to send out plumbing inspectors and they're going to have to do I think of a septic system. They're going to have to do this, they're going to have to soil test, they're going to have to have this, they're going to do this. Well, yeah, the fee's going to be a little bit more than if I'm going to change I'm changing all the faucets in my house, or I'm putting in a new water line in, instead of the bathroom being over here, it's going to be over there. But there doesn't need to be 47, okay, you're putting in a new faucet, and then we're going to get you for moving the water line, then we're going to get you for, you moved
$9 a fixture.
Yeah, I mean, it's a plumbing deal, just like electricity. And I'm completely terrified of electricity, so if you say electricity, yeah, you're going to get one rate from me. It's about $5,000 just for me to look at something. But why does there have to be, it's one panel, it's two panels, it's a 100-amp box, it's a 200-amp box. It's electricity. We should simplify the fees overall. I don't think we should get rid of all the fees, but modification and modification of some of the fees. There is a lot of stuff in here that we could get rid of.
Yes, like for instance, plumbing, how do we determine how many fixtures? Do we depend on the homeowner to voluntarily say how many fixtures there are? Or do we have the plumbing inspector count them?
The applicant tells us how many fixtures they're going to change when they apply for the permit.
And I sort of go back to what you said. You're going to trust them to a certain extent. Well, yeah, you are going to trust them. I can't think of anybody in the world that doesn't come in and say, I'm going to build a house out on Constellation Drive, and I can't tell you exactly how many square feet it is and what kind of fuse box I have to have and whether or not it's going to be city water or a well. For the most part, most of these people know this going in. So why isn't there just a plumbing permit or however it is that they work it, electric, and instead of being a gazillion dollars spreading it out across 3 pages, it's a plumbing permit, line 1.
So you're basically proposing a concept of staff coming and simplifying, producing for debate a flat fee for plumbing and electric. Am I correct on that, Councilor Carey?
Yes, it is. And staff is going to have to play a huge role in this. Councilor Milks, of course, knows what all this stuff costs, maybe Leroy. But the fact of the matter is, we're going to have a base. We're saying, yes, this needs to be changed, and this has to be modified, but I'm going to need somebody to tell me what the prices are, because I have no idea. I live in a 250-year-old house. I haven't done anything in that amount of time, so I have no idea. So we're going to have some expertise to tell us exactly what this is. I know why Minot has all kinds of people going out there to build. I don't see anything, just build a house. Mm-hmm. Same with the other towns around here. It's more or less, you're going to build a house, thank you. Mm-hmm. I don't want that to be us, because I get back to the city manager's problem. If we allow them to build the house, where's our culpability? Yeah. We told them it was okay to build it. The place burned down because the wiring was crappy because we didn't look at it. We can't do that. But we can definitely
And I'd add,
simplify what we're calling this and make it easier for a builder to come in and say, I need a plumbing permit and a electric permit. And that's my project. They're going to look at it and say, a plumbing and electric. There's nothing else in the plans that shows us that. Now, I do see where you're coming from, because I can think right offhand of Councilor Boss and I worked on a project before we came here, and it was terrible. I felt so bad for the builder, because we told somebody something and said, do it, and then when he started, no, that's not right. And then Leroy goes out, and they're doing what Leroy told them, and Steve comes out. Well, yeah, you got a problem there, but that's our problem. We should be giving continuity in how we're doing this stuff. So when they approve a plan, because that's going to be a lot of complaints, well, you're not following through. Well, that's us. We need to follow through. If the planning department says this is the way it's going to be, well, the person that goes out and inspects it better be on those plans. Can't be something different. So that's my whole thing with this. Yes, we need to.
I agree with Counselor Carrier to simplify and Counselor Milks, but I don't think we can do that right here in this meeting.
Thank you.
And
So
Counselor-
what
and
we're
let me
talking
just-
about
let
it,
me just finish, I'm sorry. And I think Counselor Carrier was talking about getting information from the city, from the people who know, can come say, we've got 16 of
actually,
these.
that's just what I said. I'm going to ask just for consensus. I asked if that was correct, if Councilor Carrier wants to have the city staff look at consolidating both electrical and plumbing and proposing that
Asking
back.
for as
Well,
well.
and I'm not going to just say electrical and plumbing. I mean, there's other stuff in here that we can do, but I don't see a reason for this to be 4 pages long. I just don't.
You mean
I mean, I'm not
16.
going to say what the fees should be, but having to go through 4 pages to find stuff is terrible.
If we look further on that same note, so do we have council? Are you all in favor of looking at least plumbing and electrical right now? We'll see what else comes up as we go around the room to consolidate down to a more simplistic fee structure.
well, yes.
We're asking
Yeah.
the city to look at that and
Staff.
give us feedback, the staff.
Staff.
Yes, I agree with that.
Everybody, good? Nods? Anybody disagree? Okay. Councilor Walker, what do you see in here that should be addressed?
There's just, there's a few things throughout this whole thing, but this is so tangled up right now that I'm not sure that we can really pick out everything that we need to move forward with here. But I can tell you a couple things that have bugged me forever, and when I was in business, you have an alarm in your place and it goes off. One police officer drives down to your place. Actually, you get a phone call in most cases because it's 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. The wind rattles the door, or some dub's over there shaking the door handle and the alarm goes off. You get a $35 bill. You have a police officers on duty all night, in most cases, riding around the New Auburn area, the West Auburn area, the North Auburn area. And you get a bill, $35. And you got to get up and drive all the way in, and you say, well, the door's locked, there's nobody in there. Well, I had to make a note that I did my job, $35 for what? It shouldn't have been more than a 5-minute thing, and it ends up being 25 minutes because you got to wait for me to get out of bed and come in. I've had a heartache for years over that. And if you come more than 3 times, then it changes again. I don't know what it is, the chief might know. But
That's ordinance review. The base fee,
and
though.
and maybe your first time when you first put it in, you notify them you've got it, you get a free one.
That-
You can't
Ca-
leave that out.
Hey, Councilor Walker, we're going to have that in the actual ordinance review on the fees ongoing for fire calls and alarm calls. Is there anything else? Councilor Milks?
Yeah, so we've got this, you've got domestic heat. I don't even understand what that means. Are we charging $3 per kilowatt for everybody domestically on their heat, if they use electric heat? Are we charging $12 for gas, oil, central air?
What page
Are
are you
these-
on, Counselor?
we're on page, 1, 2, 3,
416.
It's at the bottom.
page 4 at the bottom, and then it goes around on, after manufactured dwellings, we got above-ground pool, in-ground pool, 40 and 50, but we charge over, at another point, we charge, for an in-ground pool, 40, and above-ground pool, an 80. We charge somewhere else, which I just saw. And so I think, and then we've got alarm system. We charge $18 per alarm system, 50 cents per outlet. Low volt, I mean, I don't know, we're charging for motors? What are motors?
So that is part of the electrical permitting fee schedule
Oh.
for somebody hooking up an electric motor.
Okay, so so these are all electrical.
You go back up to the top, you'll see where electrical starts. So that's why you might see a fee that's different for pools.
No, here's the above.
Above ground, in ground. It's because that's the electrical component to that. And then you have another one where it's actually,
So could we have one fee if you're gonna put a pool in? It's inclusive of everything, because you're gonna need plumbing, electric, and construction when you put a pool in, whether it's above ground or below ground. So couldn't we just have, that covers the electric, the plumbing, and above or below ground, whatever construction it is, instead of 35 for above ground pool here, and 80 for in-ground under construction, right? New construction. And then we get charged for a pool in plumbing, or maybe it's just we get charged for a pool in electrical,
yeah, I think.
40 and 50. And then we're gonna get charged for a motor in that pool, right?
No, that's the hookup of the pump.
Okay.
So, would be included in the electrical permit for the
So
pool.
the point, I guess my point on that pool, so I'd like to see just, if it's new construction, right? It includes,
But it might not be. You could take a pool that you bought, and you've got to now put a pump on it, and now it's an electrical charge, is what I'm guessing. The pool already exists, you're not having a fee for the pool. You're just having a fee for the electrical that might need to go to that pool, Eric? Is that what that might take?
if you're
I
the new
suppose you-
owner, you're the new owner of that pool. If it's an
Yeah,
exist-
you could be replacing, installing a new, we could have a simple permit that covers the whole thing, but then you would have a homeowner potentially replacing a pump that's not replacing a pool that would pay more than they would have had to under the old structure.
We'll keep going, keep looking. Belinda, Counselor Gary?
Well, one of the biggest complaints I've heard is about yard sales or, church fairs and craft fairs and things, about how if a church has a craft fair, they gotta pay a $50 charge for tables that they may rent out, or they may use themselves to raise money for the homeless or the needy. And it's one thing if a business wants to rent tables and that's their business, but some of these churches and stuff, they only have one a year, so I'm not liking, and they're not liking, having to pay $50. It's for instance, where I live, they have a rummage sale, so we come in and get a permit to have a rummage sale or a yard sale, and it's $15. But if we want to do a craft fair and have the tenants put whatever handmade items or stuff they want, I've got to come in and get a $50 one. So I'd like to see that at least cut in half or done away with.
Yeah, I agree with Counselor Gary on that we had even discussed that perhaps eliminating the yard sale, these types of sales for the one or twos a year. So to eliminate those, that you get the permit, but to prevent people from doing one a week, that past the one or two that you get at no charge. So the church that has a yearly craft sale fine, you do that, but if you're doing 4 a year, you're gonna pay a fee after the first one or something along those lines to make it, I think is what Council Gary is saying, that
Any other thoughts on yard sales permitting?
Yeah, I think they should be permitted so that we can make sure that they're not happening consistently throughout the year, but I do think that we can get rid of the fee. I do wonder, though, about the difference between an organization hosting an event, a similar event in a building. Is there any staff time being used for either of craft fair, as we're talking about, or for yard sales, garage sales?
We wouldn't, in planning and permitting, we wouldn't spend any staff time on a yard sale if it's in an approved event center where they could have other types of events.
Yeah. Then I think it's fine. I mean, if there's no staff cost.
The history behind this, and not to say pro or con on either one, was to prevent the perennial, never-ending yard sale that would go on every single weekend and every day forever.
I have a question then, because I'm looking on page 8, and we're talking about the yard sales versus the flea markets and stuff like that. And I understand one-day events, yes, the fee, but then I look down here and it's like 3 months. Okay. That's a store. That's not a yard sale, that's a store.
Seasonal store.
It's a flea market, craft fair swap.
And you
So-
get back over here and it's $15 for the agricultural barn sales, and it's 1 3-day permit per month. So I think that be it the barn sale, the garage sales, or the, whatever, the flea markets or craft fairs, we probably ought to tighten that language up and make it sort of pretty much the same for all three, because I don't want the craft fair running for 3 months. I don't want the yard sale running for 3 months, especially out on Hotel Road while I'm driving home every day.
So let's draw just for, let's see if we can get some conclusion, because this has come up. I've talked to multiple counselors about this. Defined, let's say if we need a permit, they need to at least register, to avoid a payment, register for their residential garage yard sale. I'm not talking about the business of the flea market or anything. So they got to register. Now, there's a fee, it's $15. You really don't get anything. It's more of a deterrent than an enforcement. If we proposed, and I think this is, Counselor, your idea, free yard sale permit, it's free in the month of May prior to spring cleanup. Talked to Counselor Walker about this as well. He had another actually add-on to that if you paid $15, you got 3 yard sale permits. Permit is good for a weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, as long as what your first yard sale was in May, solving your problem, and then 2 subsequent free ones post fact. Okay, however you want to do it, end up being $5 a permit. Is there agreement on modifying this so we still know what's going on, so we still prevent the perpetual yard sale, but we limit the fee or eradicate the fee depending upon how good it is for the city? Councilor McLeod, yours is great because it's before spring cleanup. Then it actually alleviates some of what we're hauling away and prevents some or mitigates some of the safety issues. Agreement there?
I just have one question, one staff question about that. Do any of our current computer systems or systems that we're trying to bring online allow us to, can I register a yard sale online and print my own little registration out so I have it for enforcement, so I no longer need staff involvement for something like that?
Currently, no. I think that's so we actually have a meeting tomorrow, I believe, on our system to see what we can move from here onto online
Okay.
options. That's how if we were going to do this with no fee, we need to have that online, lets people do it themselves, and then we're just collecting the data so that if somebody complains, Councilor McLeod's had, 5 weekends of yard sales, we can go through and say, well, you registered or you didn't register.
Will that also be talking about fees collected in that conversation, to what the mayor was saying earlier, that if we had a state licensed electrician come in, if we issued the permit online, knowing that a state licensed electrician, whereas a contractor is registered but not really as much as a plumber or an electrician, that we could do that online, print it out at home, and then get the final write-off from them. Is that another potential part of that system?
That's the potential part.
Okay, perfect. So that would also help some of this clear it up.
It's always good to give an impetus to try to do something though, right? Okay, so yard sales. We got some staff work on that. Okay.
Ooh, I want to go.
Wait, hold on. Counselor Garrett, you had one. Counselor McLeod has one.
All right. Page 8, the very top, taxi cab business licenses. With the event, with Uber and Lyft, I would like to get rid of us having to inspect the taxi cabs so long as they have a state inspection, as well as, their business, and they have a business license to run their business as they see fit. I don't see that we need to have more rigorous requirements than a state inspection for that, especially where we have services that don't require it.
So would you recommend striking that entire section?
The per cab, yes, and then the driver's license, yes. Both of those.
I'd like to know what they do for inspections first before we strike it.
I believe there's like I don't know if it's it's been a while since I've observed this being done at the PD, but it used to be at least all the cabs would come in at a certain point. We would inspect them. Lewiston does something else, so we kind of share that. I think the permit actually Lewiston does, and so inspections we do. Staff's recommendation is to strike this entire section.
I support that.
And I think, I've had conversations with the one cab owner that we have in Auburn. This is a struggle for his business. I think that he does feel like it's not a level playing field when it comes to this. And so, and then what that would then generate is we would also look at changing the ordinance as far as how we, regarding the entire section of the ordinance, so that it would be up to him. It's the market that drives what he's charging. So it's not, we have some requirements that says that if they go from one section of the city to another section, you can add another fee. A normal, someone who's not using a cab very often is not going to have any idea that they just went from one district to another district, which then adds the fees. And so some do that use it frequently. They know how much it's going to cost to go from their house to the mall. But staff's recommendation is just to strike this. We will look at whether or not there's any language that cities are using as far as the, Uber and Lyft and all that, and have a collective statement regarding that. But I think we can strike the cab language.
That was an easy one.
You should have picked
Counselor
that
McLeod,
one
do you have a second
earlier.
one? I should pick that one first. Do you have a second one?
No, just to piggyback off what Councilor Carrier was saying, that a lot of these, I feel we could shrink them down from having 3 or 4 under a subheading to kind of splitting the middle and
Get around
finding
borders.
that.
Very good. Counselor Lasagna?
On page 5, circuses, carnivals, fairs, festivals, that's an electrical fee. That can be combined, listening to what Councilor Carrier said, so that you just have a fee for a carnival and all of those? They pay, so just have them say, you're here, this is what you're paying. So I think that doesn't need to be separate. On page 7, at the top, we discussed this earlier, the massage license annually. Do we need to charge each therapist when the establishment is paying an annual fee, or do we have the establishment pay a little bit more? I don't know why we would charge the therapist. Then in the middle of that page, mobile food distribution.
Hold on one second. Let's just, if we could, let's address, so duly noted on first topic, I think about the consolidation of electrical.
Yeah.
Phil, you want to talk about massage licenses?
Yeah, so I think what staff will come back with is a recommendation that if it's establishment, maybe with, 1 to 3 therapists, it would be at one rate. And any therapist above and beyond that, if it's a single therapist, then they're paying that rate. But if I have 8 therapists in my business, then all I really should be paying for is the background check for each one of those. And that does fall in line with the state requirement regarding background checks, but I think we can eliminate that additional fee where a state background check is like $25 or $30.
Well,
And it's not an exorbitant amount of money if we weren't able to collect it either.
the state requires a licensed massage therapist to have a background check?
We can look at this, but I believe that there's massage licenses, tattoo licenses.
Yes.
There are requirements on that.
So we could, instead of having the fee, we could just have someone provide a background check on all the people that are, here's a legal background check on all these, here's on Leroy, your massage therapist, here's a background check on them.
Do they not get background checks when they're licensed through the state?
So, on I'll have to check. I believe they do.
Okay.
I think there's that requirement. It doesn't, there's a difference between just being a therapist and being an establishment, and so that there's a breakdown on that. I'd have to,
Okay.
that's one we can look at more. Part of our background check is more of that internal background check. That internal background check is then given to the PD. There's a lot that takes place that never makes it to an actual criminal conviction. So that internal background check is what we would be looking at here as well.
We're trying to do one each, to be fair, because we're just talking about one each, and then we'll come back. And Counselor Boss?
We've covered a number of the ones that I had questions about. I would like, overall, since we're looking at this comprehensively, if we can have a list of all of the fees that are required by state law, so that we know if we have any wiggle room with them, and then also a list of any fees that we have in Auburn that are duplicative of state fees for the same purpose, like the massage therapist fee. I think we also have a fee, although I don't see it in this list, for value-added food producers, so people who are doing canning at home, there's also a state fee for that as well.
Where do you see that?
I don't see it on this list. I thought we may have gotten rid of it last year during a review. This is not the first time that we as a council have reviewed fees, but if there are any fees that are duplicative of state fees, I'd like to see that as a list, because unless there's a good reason for it, it seems unfair.
Yeah, I think, you're gonna find your liquor licenses, they are duplicative. And we're gonna have multiple fees for that because there's a requirement of the city for licensing that as well. But we can break that out to show which ones are.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, because then that would fall under a state-required fee, right? If we're required as a municipality to also have a fee for liquor licenses, that makes sense. But I do see one that I'd like to talk about. Roller skating rinks annually with a partial kitchen is $60, with a full kitchen is $120. What's the theory behind that?
Are they inspecting the kitchens
Yeah, are
maybe
they,
where they
what's
wouldn't be
the
inspecting?
extra $60 for the kitchen?
We don't have a,
Eric, if we're inspecting kitchens, it's on any kitchen regardless of whether or not it's a roller skating.
Yeah, I don't know if this replaces the kitchen inspection required for food service. We could check with the clerk's office, but if there's a kitchen, it would be getting inspected anyways.
Okay, thank you.
Is that, excuse me, I don't mean to, is that's in addition to the USDA inspection that they do? Just because I know somebody that's going through it right now, the USDA inspects, and as long as the USDA has inspected, the city sort of looks at the certificate and says, okay.
So for a bakery or a kind of a
I'm
produce.
just thinking of food service in general, because we're talking about, with the roller rink, we were talking about a kitchen, and I think of two different separate things when I'm thinking about a kitchen. There's a difference between an oven and a frylater, where there's more of a chance of a fire with one than there is the other.
For a bakery or kind of produce production, there would be the USDA type inspection. If they're serving like takeout food or restaurant food, it's handled by Department of Health and Human Services instead. And we, in Auburn, do those inspections, and the state accepts our inspection. We do have the option of not doing those, but.
Getting back to what Councilor Boss said, does that also go into, I'm thinking of the farmer's market and food items that are sold through the farmer's market?
Those are, a lot of them are Department of Ag or USDA, but there could be some that would be, if they were a licensed takeout establishment, then it would be a DHHS inspection, and the city's inspector does those inspections for DHHS.
so back to roller rinks. So as a follow-up, if staff could find out what the justification, why it seems pretty obvious that they're being singled out, because evil things happen at roller rinks, and why they need to be, why this is being put here. Correct? It does seem like it doesn't belong.
Our skating rink here in Auburn doesn't have a kitchen. Roller skating rink.
Now, one could argue that we don't have another roller skating rink because we are negatively inclined through permitting, i.e. same thing with pool tables, jukeboxes, maybe not jukeboxes. Okay, so that's roller skating rinks. That's what you wanted to bring up. We're going to keep going around the room, okay? Councilor Carrier,
City manager had basically covered the subject that I was going to talk at. I was looking at the licensing and fees for different classes of liquor stores, and I think you partially answered it. A lot of those fees and permitting and those type of things are decided by the state. So I guess what I would be looking for is, I'm not sure if Councilor Lasagna had said about it, what the difference in the fees are. I mean, are we duplicating the same fees that the state is charging for?
So the state does have a charge. Something to keep in mind, there's one liquor enforcement officer for the state that runs from York all the way to Waterville. Just
Is
one.
it?
So that means the requirements for a lot of any issues comes back to the municipality. So we are collecting fees, and it does go to offset some of those costs, because there, you know, it's not, years ago, we used to have a liquor enforcement officer that would handle a lot of this. That's no longer the case.
Well, I guess I'm wondering, and I've looked in here, and it talks about beer and liquor, and I understand the difference between wine, beer, liquor. But I look at something that's up to 3,000 square foot, it's $300. 3,000 to 6,000, it's $400. 6,000 to $500. Confused as to why we do that.
I'd have to look, my guess, we'll check the state statute, my guess is this is probably following that, but I could be wrong, but I'll check.
Okay.
Counselor Walker?
No, we're good. We're doing good.
Counselor Milks?
So along that same question, so we got a Class A lounge liquor annually, plus cost of advertising hearing is $1,000. But then right below it says up to 2,999 square feet, it's 1,300. Which is it?
So
Is
anything,
it 100,000 plus 13?
I'll have to check.
Okay.
I
'Cause
don't charge
that-
this, so I will look, though. I'm not sure. I can see what you're saying. There's two
And then
two
if you're a
sets here.
tavern, do you get charged additionally,
I
the 150?
believe that's the annual fee, and my guess is you have the one-time cost. If it's up to 3,000 square feet, it's 1,300, but I'll check.
That's one time?
So that might be the fee that you have coming in, and then you have the annual of 1,000.
Oh, okay, so then, and then your first one is 1,300, one time, and then 1,000 every,
I'm guessing. I don't
Okay.
know. I'll have to check.
and then below that, do you get charged additionally if you're a tavern versus a bar, but lounge?
You have you will pull a different license based on your establishment.
I guess,
So if you're pulling a tavern license, you're not pulling a Class A lounge.
Which would be nice, I'd like to go
What's
inside
the-
one of
so-
the Class A lounges.
what's the
Oh, I'm
difference
sorry,
between
no,
a
you
tavern
are
and a
pulling,
lounge?
you would be pulling both. So your tavern license, if you're meeting that definition of state statute regarding a tavern license, then you'll have to pay that additional fee.
All right. And then, all right, there was another one here I had.
And then if you're serving food, it's a different component. So, there's a lot to this, but I will clarify that. because-
Dances, dance halls, do we need to have that still in there, $35 a piece? Dances and dance halls? I'm
Ask,
almost-
folks, do we want to start, did staff have a recommendation on that as far as?
You know, I didn't see anything on that, so I say
Does
it's
the
up
high
to you.
school pay a fee when they have a dance at the high school?
If they do, we waive it.
Okay, I mean, that's the only one I can think of.
It used to be, this is archaic. Grange halls used to have
What's
dances,
that,
everybody used to have
what's
dances.
the line dancing where what do they call that when a bunch of people get together?
It's not square dancing, but it's line dancing.
Yeah, it's, and there's,
Contra.
no, there's a different thing. It's a group
Thought it
of
was
people. I don't think we should be charging for people dancing.
Yeah, I'm on the fence. I would be okay with an initial charge as you are opening your business, and that is we are licensing a bowling alley. Unless you're having major renovations, which would fall somewhere else, you still have 10 lanes in your bowling alley. And unless staff is doing something to go in there and check and look at stuff or change things, I don't know that we need to keep the fees where they are for that particular, for only the items that staff may be a lot more hands-off on. And I could just be ill-informed on what we do when we license dance halls. But stuff like that, like the first time, yes, but subsequently, unless there's big changes.
My guess is if I want to rent out space to have a dance, that location that I'm renting is going to say, by the way, you need to make sure you get a permit with the city. By that permit with the city, then notifies the department that there will be a dance. We've had, we haven't had this in a while, but we've had some dances where they've rented out a space that now required a lot of police services. So my guess is it's notifying us that this is happening. Staff then, the clerk's office would then notify the PD, hey, this event's happening at this location. It could be at the community college. They could rent out that space, bring in somebody from Massachusetts to do the DJing, and you could have a large dance there.
It's called a wedding.
And then we would have to,
All right.
then we would know that.
It's a wedding.
And then we've got tattoos.
If it's already licensed to do it, it doesn't need it.
Well, hold on to the tattoos, but the dance hall, I think if you look at the definitions, yeah, high school have dances, who has dances? Weddings have dances, certain funerals that I've been to.
But if your
we have-
establishment already has an entertainment piece, which like say,
VFW.
say the Hilton or the VFW, they already have that, then that's not required.
But
It's
it's-
really about if it's at a space that's not.
So this is on a per event basis.
Per event.
This is, I think, this is something that gets down to, is it self-reporting? Do you file a permit with no fee? Which triggers PD to understand? And then based upon their history, do they actually, and that's where we have the per instance charges for PD and fire for extra visits or so forth. It's more punitive if they're breaking the laws versus, charging everybody up front, even though it could be a really nice dance at the senior center. I don't know, just something to think about, I think, when we're looking at modernizing and streamlining. But I will say, as we're going halfway through on the second round, as we keep talking about this more and more, we're all city councilors and/or mayor and staff. Is this easy to follow? If we were residents, just residents without any interaction whatsoever in city government, and we wanted to do some work and we're looking at this, would we feel knowledgeable about what we were doing, or would we be a little overwhelmed? And I'll give you one example. Eric, could you pull up on the big screen, please? City of Auburn electrical permit application. As we're talking about this, I just want to give you a real-world example, something that I discovered, and I want to understand what you all think it means once you look at it. And if we had a role play as a customer here and we're gauging our customer experience as a city, what would that grade be? Okay, so if you could make to the right side, wiring openings, outlets, lights, switches. First, before we make it bigger, residential minimum fee is $32. That's the minimum. So it's a little bit, when we're looking at what the permitting fee here is online, it's 25 plus so much. So it's 32. So if you make upright big, really big if you could possibly, Eric, in the upper right corner. Talking about openings, wire openings. 1 to 10 wire openings, $12. Next column is number of units. The next column is fee. If I had 5 openings and I put 5 under number of units, what would my fee be?
It'd be $60.
35.
5
minimum
times
fee
12?
Will be the minimum fee.
5 times 12, $60.
Minimum fee is 32.
Right.
Okay. If I had 25, what would it be?
More.
Be $15, but then you would be charged the minimum.
Say again, okay. So here's different, Steve says $60. What's the actual cost, though, between 1 and 10 openings, Eric? $12? Is that what, if you saw that?
It's $12, but then you have to also look at the minimum. If
No,
you
no, no,
don't
no,
hit the minimum.
$12. So it's $12 regardless of the number of openings between 1 and 10? Because when I fill out a form or PO or something, these columns are used for multiplication purposes. So per unit, number of units, fee. So if I put 8, that would be $96. That would be my fee. But it's not.
Correct, it's not.
So that's the customer service portion that is eluding us, the city. It's only $12. But if I looked at this, if I'm just Joe Blow and I want to update my house, my living room, okay, per unit, number of units equal my fee. That's how I would calculate my fee. And that goes further on down. But it's a good time to talk about this because the whole process is confusing. Am I the only one that saw that? Steve, you saw it that way.
That's how I read it.
I didn't, but who fills this out? Does the electrician fill this out?
The person, the individual, owner's name, description of work.
It could be the homeowner, but most of the electrical permits are licensed electricians.
So they would know.
But you still can do work by yourself in your own home, though. So now you're paying an electrician to fill out this form for you. That's an additional fee, okay? So it keeps going up. But before I even got to that point, and I'm looking to see what the fees are, and I pulled this up because it's on our website, this is printable, I might stop. I might start calculating everything I want to do and come up with a completely egregious number that's wrong.
Plus, you have to print it and handwrite it. You can't even put the stuff in and have it automatically calculate for you.
No, you can't. So, and I don't want to interrupt everything, but when we put all this into perspective now, we're all understanding the complication with what we have, and we're in city government. What does the average resident see when they start looking at this and trying to navigate through the Auburn experience? So, Councilor Gary, is there anything else you want to talk about?
Can we please finish on the yard sales and craft fairs? We just talked basically about doing away with certain fees for regular yard sales, but we never finished discussion on, say, like, if the church or the United New Auburn group wanted to do a craft fair or a rummage sale, how much the fee here is $50. I'm sorry, I can't see with these glasses. Their fee is $50. In some groups, everybody divides up the profit at my place.
Do you have any proposals?
Yes, I'd like to see at least it cut down to $25 for a one-time event.
Or waived.
Or
I thought we
waived,
said to get
depending
rid of it
on
and just
if
keep the
they've come
permit.
to-
Yeah.
But see, then again, it falls back if it gets waived. Usually, the council is the one that waives it, I know at one time, if any group thought their fees were outrageous, like for the Little League, if they want their food license waived, they have to fill out a form, and it's put on the council agenda, and then we have to waive it. So are we going to put more stuff on the agenda for them to be waived?
I would like to waive that for a single, one time a year for nonprofits type.
Next page.
Changing it to that, so that way it will, right, community-based nonprofit, so that way everybody gets a free one, church gets a rummage sale, the nonprofits get, their one thing, and then after that, we can figure out what that, if they're going to have 3 or 4 a year, if they have seasonal things, we'll give everybody one to level the playing field, and then, when you start getting into multiples, then I don't want to say it's more of a business, but it is it's generating revenue at that point.
Council, y'all in favor of nonprofits, community groups having one free rummage sale / church sale annually?
/ craft fair /
Community groups, not necessarily nonprofits, though.
Page 8,
There's a
Eric.
lot of nonprofits that make a lot of money.
There's community groups like the West Auburn Neighborhood Association or North Auburn Neighborhood Association that are incorporated as a nonprofit.
Girl Scouts. that
So
kind of stuff.
nonprofit / community group.
Sure.
Council, this all have to come to vote later? Okay, very good. Okay, Councilor Gary, good. Councilor McLeod?
Sorry, go ahead, you have something?
Oh, just on this topic, one thing that I believe we have at times is someone is raising money for someone who needs, maybe they have cancer and they're fighting cancer or something like that. So the question would be, is it just community group or is it more of a community fundraiser? And if you get into that, then that really does change the definition, but we do have them, I want to make sure.
Councilor Gary, you brought this up.
Yes.
Your thoughts on this?
I would like to see that. As long as it's credible and they come to the city and file a paper saying that they're going to have it on X day, I don't see why not.
Council? Consensus?
I would
yes or
just
no?
question, how would you delineate credibility? Like, how would you say that one organization is more credible than another, or that?
Well, say like if somebody's got cancer, it's not that hard to, you can't hide it.
No, I know, I understand that. I'm just saying, how would you
Hide it.
limit them to just that one?
Well, would
Because I
your-
could set up a fund for myself if I was sick, and then Counselor Boss could set up a separate fund, you know what I mean? And we
Right.
could just perpetually have, I'm just looking at the consequences either way, just to see what it would look like. If we start getting into that realm, that's all. But that might fall
Right.
under garage sales, though.
It could, yeah, we would list it as a fundraiser.
Yeah, that could be a fundraiser garage sale and not a craft fair type thing, so we could skirt it that way.
I mean, looking at the
Right.
issue differently, we don't have any costs for those kinds of events, right? We're not getting PD calls, we're not staffing them, other than the permit fee. I mean, that would help
Always.
the conversation.
It's always traffic, it's always, so there's always something that, you know, maybe what you want to do is you want to put language in that says that in the city of Auburn, you're not going to have more than 1 yard, 2 yard sales, 3 yard sales a year, and that's it. And so then it would be, if somebody was to complain, then the PD would then get involved. But then you're eliminating all the fees for these and that permitting process, and you're leaving it up. So if there is an issue, there's an ordinance that says you weren't supposed to have more than 3. Your neighbors have all said you've had 5 here for the last, 5 weeks.
Yeah.
And then that's a city ordinance violation.
I don't think anybody wanted to get rid of the registration part of it.
No.
I think we still wanted to register, just,
Yep.
the simple filling out the paperwork, I'm okay filling that out
Remove
if
the
we're waiving
cost.
the fees for however it is. So that way it's documented that I had a yard sale this weekend and I'm not having one for consecutive weekends.
No.
Self-registration,
Yeah, for that, at least for that, yeah.
yeah.
What
No
about if
fees
it's-
for any of yards or just the one time? Is that what
Well, I
you're
don't know yet.
Well, yeah, there is a
At least
couple.
self-registration.
The self-registration part, but there was a couple ideas, I'd like to see what staff said, that, $15 fee up to 3 yard sales. In other words, buy one, get 2 for free, as
saying?
long
They
as,
already get the whole weekend.
yeah, but 3 weekends.
Oh, 3 weekends.
Oh,
I thought
And
you
a
said
yard
Friday,
sale is
Saturday,
defined as a
Sunday.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or a 3-day event. So,
Now, how does craft fairs fall into this?
craft fairs, there's a separate ordinance.
Right.
And fees for craft fairs, because those are typically, according to what you were just saying,
Right.
a craft fair would be a for-profit event versus a fundraiser.
Well, see, when we talk about a craft fair, like say at Barker or Townhouse or Esplanade, each tenant that wants a table gets a table, and whatever they made, they sell, they keep the money. I mean, it's not big bucks, but they do that once a year.
It's not a nonprofit, it's not a community group, and it's not a fundraiser.
So,
Currently, they would
It's a business. It's a business.
they'd have to pay a fee.
They'd have to pay.
well,
Yeah.
that's
Unless
what I
they
was
have one-time
arguing about.
waiver like they do for
Can we
yachts.
cut the fee at least in half? Because they don't, I mean, none of these places have more than maybe 20 tables.
I think if you start looking at the number of tables, I'm not saying it's a bad idea. If you want to cut the fees and have no fees, have no fees. But also, I don't think it's fair for us to say, well, we should cut fees on these because it's no more than 20 tables here. Because the moment you do that, another business is going to have 200 tables and 4,000 people there, okay? I've seen them happen. There's places all over the state that do this. So the generalizations are difficult, or the assumptions, I should say, are difficult. But if you want to have fees or not have fees.
Would Barker be able to have one craft fair, yard sale type thing?
Again, we already threw something out to staff. We should let staff work on this. I mean, I can't answer that question, okay? I'm not going to be if that's an idea that you have for staff to bring up to us later in the ordinance, so be it.
Yeah, if it's happening in their facility and they're not advertising it, it's amongst tenants, I don't even know why they would even have to apply for this. That's not even a need.
It's an
but
internal thing.
It's an internal, right.
But their families come in, and yes, we do put something in the paper saying we're having a yard sale.
Then now you're reaching it,
I mean, I'm being honest.
Then pay.
yeah.
Yeah, pay the fee.
So
Unless you guys want to waive the fee.
well, I think that if, to what you're saying, Counselor Gary, you do that once a year,
Yes.
then regardless of the tables, you guys could each individual apartment could use up their free yard sale
Right.
collectively for that building. You all have it on the same weekend.
Right.
And that would also get everyone registered and do the exact same thing that you're saying and waive the fee. So it's
Right.
not a craft fair necessarily. You are all having a yard sale together just based on the building.
But see, the city clerk has a definition. I mean,
Is that something we are able to change that definition?
So it would be in your ordinance.
Okay, so that's something that we can work on then.
I mean, a yard sale where they could put something that they handmade on their table? Is that what you're going to allow?
Sure. For that
Okay.
one weekend, absolutely. You sell whatever you got.
Okay, that's fine then.
Except for this adult thing.
Yard sale.
Can I have one I want to get rid of.
Okay, hold on. So you're okay at your clarification?
Yes.
Councilor McLeod?
Mobile food distribution unit. I would like to know what we do for the fees for those, because that seems to deter, or could deter food trucks from coming into town. If they're already licensed through the state and they have a kitchen license through the state, I'm wondering if we also need to charge a fee, especially a per 3-month fee or a yearly fee for that roving diner. It's on page 716, sorry, in the middle. Oh, sorry.
Mobile food, it is. Clarification, this is food trucks?
It is.
Okay. These are inspected by the state. This came up during several events that we've had over the last 2 years, New Year's Eve Auburn, as well as the Memorial Day Parade. When we went out and proactively tried to get food trucks to come in in these routes of these events, the common complaint I heard from them was, I'm already inspected by the state regularly. I'm inspected by a lot of other, sometimes municipalities, i.e. Portland, but I have to come here for one weekend and pay a fee to set up shop and sell for an event that you invited me to. They thought that was onerous, and hence, we did not get the food truck pull that we wanted to in these events. So it's an issue. Actually, I was talking to a code enforcement person from a neighboring city today about this. It's an issue not just in Auburn, but around.
The only thing in there that I might want to keep is vendor use of city property. Because that is a different type of a fee. Right. They rent their spot if they're going to have a prime real estate that the city decides is prime for food trucks, but I would not want to deter food trucks from making their rounds down in this area, because we lose out on a lot of delicious food that we have to now drive away for.
I'm going to give you a different argument.
Absolutely.
There's brick and mortar restaurants in the city that have to pay a fee or business license fee annually. And then does it put food trucks at an unfair competitive advantage because they're fully mobile without having to pay property tax, all the better tax on their equipment annually that a permanent establishment has to pay. And I don't want to play both sides of this. I think health inspection is something. I also think service fees or able to operate fees are something else. But Phil, you had something?
I was just going to say the same thing. You know, part of this is so we know where they're going to be. Eric, there's a requirement of how many feet from a front door of a brick and mortar?
There's a setback, don't quote me, I think it's 300 feet, but I'm not 100% sure.
And then part of that is so that you know who's distributing food in the, that's another component. I don't believe we're strong either way on this, right, Eric?
And we could certainly offer a reduced fee if they're already licensed by the state. I think we have some mobile food vendors that get licensed here because they prefer our inspector, and our inspection eliminates the need for a state inspection. But
So there's reciprocity between the state and the city. So the state will accept our inspection, but we won't accept the state's?
the state will accept our inspection for restaurants and for mobile food vendors.
But we don't accept just solely state inspection.
Because we've shown them that we meet the minimum state standard, and they've delegated that authority to a handful of communities. Auburn is one of them.
Well, that's great. But we're not fully reciprocal because we won't accept a food truck with a state health inspection.
I can double check, but I think that they require, right now, our ordinance says they have to get licensed here, so that would trigger an inspection.
Okay.
There could be an exemption for mobile trucks that are already licensed at the state.
So Eric, this is kind of like our delegated review authority for some of our larger commercial projects where we can do it on our end and it counts for the state, but not.
Yeah. The state has delegated that inspection authority for restaurants and roving diners to the city.
And that's great. I mean, I know for a fact that I heard a restaurateur is brick and mortar, that it cuts the time it takes, dramatically in half to get a restaurant up and operational. But the reciprocity on a mobile truck, this is the mobility of it.
So staff can look at that and maybe propose some language that just states that if you're already licensed at the state, there's no requirement. I'm not sure about this 3, 6, 12 months. I would rather just see here's what a straight fee would be, to add an extra $50 because somebody's gonna stay 9 months more, just, not sure if that's needed.
Yeah, it's
So-
like seasonal, like it's, or just a low annual, because they're usually here for a couple weekends.
And we'll look at whatever the state fee is as well, so. it's
Can
just-
we also see what it costs for a brick and mortar too, just to see how much of a difference that is?
Yeah, it depends on if they have alcohol, it's all that. food license.
Okay.
And one other question on this, if a carnival comes to town, each one of the fried dough folks, and cotton candy folks, are they considered a mobile food distribution unit as well?
If there's a separate truck selling food, then yes.
So when we have the carnival here, we have 5 or 6, they're all paying these fees?
Yes, I believe so.
If we we don't want to shoot
Plus
ourselves.
their
in the foot.
carnival fee,
Say again?
plus their
Plus their
carnival.
carnival fee.
Plus electrical.
Plus
Plus
Okay.
electrical, okay.
And it does take a lot of staff time.
Right.
It's almost, it would be interesting to actually be able to carve out certain functions. If it's a municipal event, a large gathering, sponsored or semi-sponsored event versus a private industry event coming in. I think there is a difference, especially if it's on an invite too, but I'm not sure if that's too
Oriented
prescriptive.
event versus a for-profit.
Carnival, i.e. carnival, right? Or carnival, or, I don't know, drag race contest or something, whatever the case is, so, there's somewhat difference.
Peddlers.
Okay. Counselor?
Councilor
Lasagna?
McLeod asked my questions. One, what's a peddler? What's the difference? We have peddler fees. What is that?
So some of that would be if you had a circus and you had an event with a circus, you're gonna have peddlers that have, a
Games and
cart
stuff.
and whatever, they're gonna be having a carts with their sales that they're selling.
Cotton candy.
So it really is tied specifically to an event.
Okay. And then on page 9, going to this temporary food service establishment. So that's a brick and mortar as opposed to the mobile.
Which one are you looking at?
On page 9, about 3/4 of the way down, temporary food service establishment per event, 30 days, $60.
Yeah, I believe that again ties to an event. So if you've got something where somebody is using a space that is not normally used, then that would be the event that they would.
But they can be there for 30 days serving food for just $60? Okay, I'm just.
It's a one-time setup.
Okay, just curious of how that
I'm not sure how it came
seems
about.
compared to some of the other fees.
My guess is it probably came towards, something where you might have had somebody that set up something, say, up at Lake Grove Park or somewhere like that. They had a 30-day fee to be there.
See
I'm
if
not
you had a
sure.
pop-up restaurant or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think going back to peddlers, you could also have, sometimes you might see somebody that's selling flags or something like that. That would be a peddler, where they would get a 30-day permit for that. Or if they're going to be out there for one day, it would be 75.
Okay, that's fine for me, thank you.
Counselor Boss?
That's for me, thanks.
Okay. I have one question. Adult amusement devices. It's $1,000. Where are these things?
What page is that?
I'm sorry, page 9. Towards the bottom, second from the bottom, right above Beano and Bingo. Adult amusement devices.
$1,055.
It's got to be great. A lot more than a jukebox. Any idea? Could someone define this?
I'm not aware of any. We've never dealt with them in planning and permitting since I've been here.
Time to Google. See.
Brian, do you know what
I want one.
Staff will look into it.
I want one.
What did you say?
Staff will look into it.
I didn't know if they had them down in
Mr. Mayor, I would
DC.
like to clarify your point on the brick and mortar. Just looking really quickly, the smallest brick and mortar fee with no liquor is $150. So I think moving mobile food distribution to the same yearly fee, it would fall under that same type of price because it would be that under
And then
$2,500.
prorated based upon time of some sort?
No, just 1 year. Same thing as a brick and
Flat
mortar.
out?
Yep,
1 year?
sure.
All you can eat?
Sure, anywhere you can park.
Got one more thing.
Counselor Carey?
I hate to keep adding, but I'm looking at 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, and it gets back to one of my pet peeves. We're talking about junkyards. Not only junkyards, but we're also talking about environmental, the fill required. We're also talking about hazardous material. On the next page, solid waste. And then the delegated reviews for conformances and stuff. Just from a personal thing, I'd like to see those go way up because we deal with them, unfortunately, usually after they've already bid us. And we end up having to pay for things. And I think that we need to do a little bit more due diligence with that and possibly be charging a little bit more because to clean up one bad site could put a big hole in our budget. So I don't know how the staff would do it. That's one of those things I will defer to them, but we've got several locations around the cities that, you know, people are just using them for junkyards.
Sure.
And we know about some of them, and we are going to address them, but again, we're going to address that one after the fact. So I'd just like to see some more thought given to that one.
You know, there's the upfront charge, right, but I don't think any upfront charge that we charge would ever offset the amount of cleanup and mitigation
Okay.
on a site. My mind goes towards surety bonding and a requirement for all junkyards and so forth to have surety bonding, up to whatever number staff could deem appropriate to cover the potential mitigation of a site, so.
And we also talk about here on one of those pages, we talk about you know, how many times we'll cite them and things, and it's, you know, by the time we get finished citing people, years down the line, the project has grown too hard. So, yeah, surety bond, if that's a way to do it, I would.
And I'm not sure if it is or not.
wholeheartedly think that would be a good idea.
Eric, you want to weigh in on the junkyard piece anyway?
I think that the ones that you're talking about are facilities that have never been licensed. They're facilities where people, quite often they're a mental health issue and people start accumulating things, or it's a business that accumulates junk, but
Well, this gets back to before any of us probably were here, except maybe Phil. Phil's been here for a while. But, you know, if we see that starting to happen, we have to be able to move on it much faster, because if you don't, then you end up with 20 or 30 or 40 acres filled with not only tires and metal and stuff, you've got probably hazardous waste out there. We talk about the agricultural zone. I mean, how good is an agricultural zone if you've got poison, freon? Think of my neighbor who had, 80 gallons of parathion poison sitting in a container on his property, with the container, basically falling apart. And the city ended up taking that away. I'm not sure how well they did with that, but.
Eric, we are exploring using criminal statute on some of these as well, correct?
We are, and we're being aggressive when they start out. When we get that fourth or fifth unregistered vehicle, we're taking action, before they grow into something larger. We have 3 that I'm aware of that are really significant illegal junkyards in the city that have been around for a long time. We're waiting on a court date for 2 of those, and then we plan on tackling the 3rd. And then there's another one that you mentioned that sounds like it's bad again, that maybe 4 now. But we're waiting on a court date for 2 out of the 4 major junkyards in the city that have never been licensed.
Unfortunately, due to COVID, they're not scheduling any court appearances right now for these type of matters, so we're kind of in a waiting pattern.
And they're properties that we've gone to court and won multiple times in some cases on the same property, and made some progress towards cleanup, and then the person goes the other way and you have to start the process over. It's until you remove the person, sometimes they're a long-term problem.
Well, I know from the planning board, there are people out there that are wanting to do it right. They meet when we tell them, okay, you have to do it this way, and you have to move this kind of stuff. There are people out there doing it right. I'm more concerned with the cost to the city of the people that are out there doing it wrong.
Is there any other last parting thoughts on this? It's almost 8 o'clock. I want to be done here by 7:30. So is there any other thoughts before we kind of summarize things?
I have a couple, Mayor.
Okay.
Staff recommendations would be eliminating nursing home. It's not a requirement that we do any longer, so staff recommended that we eliminate that. It's done at a state. I just wrote all my notes on the block.
I got it, bottom of page 6. Okay.
Coin-operated amusement devices, staff recommends striking that.
Well, so is there any, let's just go through one at a time. Is there any objection to striking the fees on boarding, I'm sorry,
No, nursing
nursing
homes.
homes?
You said that was because the state is doing it?
State's doing it, we're no longer participating.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
Much like it was the same thing that happened with childcare licenses. We
Yeah.
stopped doing that after a while. That's already been taken out.
Do we have any part in that, in fire rescue or,
Nursing homes?
yeah?
We're there a lot.
But they pay.
But that's what I mean, it's paid per instance rather than, okay.
We mentioned that the other night, right, when we were talking about another facility that the chief was talking about, we had to, we end up going there quite a bit. That's on the agenda, right? We're going to be talking about, you get a gimme, and after that,
Addiction clinics, the addiction
Yeah,
clinics.
they,
I mean,
Programs, behavior
programs,
programs.
yeah.
Yep. All right, nothing more on that. Coin-operated amusement devices annually per device, per unit up to 10 is 50, per unit for 10 or more devices 30. The city clerk recommended removing this. There's nothing that we currently,
coin-operated devices.
coin-operated amusement devices, which
Do we
I'm assuming is
currently-
different than adult amusement devices.
It is.
But I'll check on that. So,
So arcade games,
Jokers.
probably,
jokers.
yeah.
Is that one of the only licenses we have in the state for that, or in the city? Jokers, or,
Arcade or something like that, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, everybody's in agreement on that? Okay.
Exhibition, performance, show per day, $5. Strike
Is that,
that.
is that,
$5 per day?
isn't that covered in the adult entertainment?
Let's put on a show.
That's the adult amusement devices.
Exhibition, performance, show. Exhibition, performance, show.
Do a puppet show at your house, go ahead.
Is that like an art exhibit, or what
know
is that like an art exhibit, or what would you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, anything like
Yeah.
that.
CLT? Theater?
It's within a building. Most of this, so if you go back and look at where these ordinances tie in,
Yeah.
this is regarding something that would be on a public place that wouldn't normally be licensed to be able to do that.
that would hold true for something like the Balloon Festival, and now what we see over in the
That's a mass
Lewiston
gathering.
side.
They come under mass gathering, so a lot of that's allowed under their mass gathering.
Would removing that also allow me to still rent one of the plazas?
That's
to
correct.
have that instead of this space? Okay.
Yep. Racetrack, we'd recommend striking that. Nothing?
That's it?
The last one is reinspection fees, $100 per inspector. What we have many times is we have people that are trying to get a license. We're finding this mostly with our marijuana establishments. We go, we inspect, give them the list. It's not in compliance. We have to then go back. Sometimes we go back on a scheduled appointment and they're not available. So we send staff out, and sometimes there's 3 people there because one's electrical, one's building, one might be health and sanitation because they're serving food. We try to schedule it all at the same time to make it convenient, but they are not available. So sometimes the reinspection fee would be, if we keep coming back to try to get you inspected, there's a cost to that. Because you weren't, it's really under, you failed to comply, really. You're not there, you're not making, you set up the appointment and then you didn't go. And Eric, I think we could probably show a spreadsheet of half a dozen or so of these businesses that we kind of chase down to try to get their inspection completed.
I think some of them will use us to come up with their checklist for what's left, instead of kind of going through and trying to make sure they've done what they were asked to do last time. So, and it becomes expensive.
Any thought on that?
Would that be inclusive of if I scheduled the revisit after I have my punch list and I make that appointment, I would still be charged that fee? Or only if a kind of like a missed appointment and you're chasing me? If I schedule my re-evaluation and everybody shows up, Eric shows up, everybody shows up, I'm there, I'm ready to go because I have an appointment with you, am I getting charged that re-inspection fee rather?
I looked at Eric.
I think we can talk to staff, come up with a recommendation that after a certain number of re-inspections, there would be an extra fee.
Yeah, I would just want to make sure that the actual first re-inspection was, on us, and that if we're chasing people, then
I don't know, I mean, the first, if you don't, a doctor's visit, If you do not call within 24 hours and notify of a canceled visit, you are charged a fee.
Yeah,
It's-
we're saying the same thing.
Yeah, but I mean, I thought you said waive the first
No, no,
reinspection.
if I show up if I show up and everything's fine, I don't want everybody to get charged the fee for a second visit. If I'm showing up and everybody shows up and we have a great second visit, but if I don't show up or I say, oh, I can't do it tomorrow, sorry, I know we had this plan, but, then yeah, they should get charged.
Phil?
Two more. Last one is just a little further down. It talks about relicensing upon late renewal by an existing licensed business. The last one says reoccurring, $100. We just recommend that more than 45, where it says, so it's 30 to 45 days late is 25. More than 45, we would actually change that to say 45 to 60 days late, 50. And then anything over 60 days late would be the 100. So it's just defining that over 60 days rather than reoccurring. Striking reoccurring and adding over 60 and adding 60 up for the more than 45.
What's the penalty if I don't register my business in 89 days? Other than a $100 fee? We're just trying to disincentivize people from being late, but is there any actual if I don't relicense for 89 days and just are willing to pay the $100 and be unlicensed, does that trigger anything else in the city?
It can trigger us going into closing your business.
Okay.
The question is, do we want to charge someone a fee to license a business? And
This is
so,
an existing license. That's part of this list, not just any business.
the existing license. Do
Not-
you want to charge all businesses the same?
Not every business in Auburn has to be licensed. So,
So once you get your license the first time, do you need one every year?
most of those have an annual, the ones that we're referring to here.
Does that cost us anything to renew a license? So if I own business A and,
Depends on the business, because it could be an inspection, it could require several staff to do an inspection. So it depends on the business.
Yeah, I think-
Because they might be using us as the inspector rather than the state for their licensing as well.
Was that it? Or was there a-
The last one is cemetery lots at Oak Hill Cemetery. This is what we have already, but it's just not listed in here, so we would recommend, a single lot fee is $400, so we just want to put it actually in the appendix rather than just what's
on the application?
currently happening, I believe, so.
When did the fee go up? Because last I heard it was $250.
I can check, but I'm not sure. My understanding was it was already 400, but I can check.
Now, that's the cemetery up by Sherwood Heights? I mean, Walton?
Walton School,
Okay, that's where I had checked for a plot.
I can check.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I did have a couple more.
No, that's fine. I was just thinking it's cheaper if my wife just left me on the side of the road. She would only get charged bulk waste pickup fee.
Yeah.
Okay. Just don't,
Tag you
FYI.
first, but wait a few days and then come back.
Wait a few days.
That's where you're going to be found, is along the side of the road.
Yeah, as long as she puts me in a black trash bag, city will take it.
I can provide this for you to review later, but fire department has several recommendations. Some of these are striking certain components, but also adding based off from what they're currently doing regarding like a blasting permit, training burns. The fee's the same, just we're defining that a little differently. Hazardous material incidents, rather than first hour per each additional hour, it's just the cost of response. And then we have a fee per apparatus. So rather than just a $200 fee and then $400 for each additional hour, it's based off from an apparatus, which would be, if it's an engine, if it's an aerial device, if it's rescue, a boat, command unit, forestry, each of those have a fee. I'll provide those for you because there's so many changes. I think it's probably best for you to review that.
Email out everything for us so to approve.
And we'll have it in the packet for the next time, and that's it.
I want to add just one other thing, just a question on, and I don't think we brought this up, but security systems, fire alarms, private residence predominantly, there's an annual renewal of $5, a $5 fee for any home-based security system that's tied into the grid, in which time if someone breaks in your house or it just goes off because your cat jumps off the counter, someone's dispatched through 911. The $5 renewal annual, we already have what happens on false alarms, and there's a penalty, and I can't find it here real quickly, but you get charged after your first 2 free visits, I believe. The $5 fee, that's one of those nuances that you have to go every year, fill out a form that's already on file, pay $5 at the police window. I don't think it's big money, but it's, why do we need to pay a $5 renewal on something that we're going to get charged for using anyways?
I would just say that staff Brian and I are actually looking at this. We think that our alarm ordinance and that process should probably be outsourced. There are companies out there that do this, so it's not done here. It's a lot more convenient for people to be able to access it. For those who were on the council when we proposed this, we reduced our alarm responses dramatically when we implemented this ordinance, because you have some people who, and it's mostly businesses, they just wouldn't train their employees, they let it set it off, we'd respond every day, and it wouldn't really matter. But once you started charging them, then the training took place and they made sure their staff knew how to properly enter a code and open the facility. So I know that we'd have a strong reason to want to keep it. What Councilor Walker was saying, you can opt out from responding. Nothing requires you to respond. We don't require you to do that. We just say we usually try to tell you if your door's open. A lot of times if we don't get a hold of someone, we'll just secure it. But there's no real requirement for you to come out, especially on a windy day. Most businesses would say, yeah, the wind's blowing, I don't need to come, and it'll reset. And a lot of times it will reset. Sometimes people go out to shut it off so they don't get that third, fourth incident that takes place. But most of the time on the same night, we don't charge more than that one time anyway, unless it was just negligent on the business part.
So you'll be looking at the residential only, the $5 annual renewal fee?
We're going to come forward with probably a proposal regarding this and take a look at actual outsourcing a lot of this. And then the proposal, you'll see why when we talk about it.
And I think an overarching too, as this conversation, went from line by line to counselor choice, we still went through everything-ish. We touched upon a lot. General themes, and council, tell me if I'm off on this. General themes seem to be simplicity, modernization of fees, justification of the fees based upon actual cost. Okay? Customer service. I added that one in there based upon the electrical thing. There are a lot, and if that can instruct you in your due diligence on systems, that would allow us to register our home-based security system annually online with the City of Auburn, sans without a fee. That would be great. Whatever else we could push online, we can look at what the cost of having that system is and weigh that against the actual customer experience. Anything else that I missed on this? This is at 15 years. I think, honestly, when was the last time we reviewed this? 50 years ago? All of it?
The full list, I don't know.
Yeah. This is painful, but thank you. Any other questions, comments? None being? Go home. Workshop is closed.